via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. If a participant wishes to speak, can you please use the remote raise hand function? When invited to address by the chair, please could all participants ensure that their microphone and camera is on to ensure they can be seen and heard when actively participating. Please ensure all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. So on that, welcome to all committee and non-elected committee members, cabinet members, officers, and anyone at home as well. Good to see everyone. So item 1, apologies for absence. I have one from Councillor Samantha Campbell. Any others?
There are, yes, Chair. We've got Councillor Wendy Gilligan, Councillor Nick Hodges, co-opting members Geraint Scott and Ellen Woodfield. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gareth. Any others? No. Item 2 then, any declarations of interest? Oh, Councillor Hennessy.
Yeah, I'd like to declare on agenda item 3, I'm an LA appointed governor to Roos Primary School, but I have dispensation to speak and vote.
Thank you. Councillor Emma Goodjohn.
Thanks, Chair. Could I declare on items 5 and 7, please? Personal, non-prejudicial, as my youngest is a member of the Vale Youth Council and is also part of the Rights Ambassador programme. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Councillor Ewan Goodjohn.
Thank you, Chair. I'd also like to declare under item 5 and 7 a personal interest as a member of my family, as a member of the Youth Council and of the engages in youth engagement with the youth service. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ewan. Councillor Asbury.
I am not sure if I have to declare an interest, but I will. I am a governor at Dinas Powys Primary School, which is mentioned somewhere in the report here. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. Agenda item 3 then, summary of Eston inspections outcomes for the summer term 24 and update on schools in statutory follow-up. Caris.
Noswaith dda, diolch yn fawr, Chair. There are 3 parts to this paper tonight. First of all, as you mentioned, Chair, an outcome in terms of the inspection outcomes for summer term 2024. We'll also be looking at the progress of schools in statutory follow-up. That we're also joined tonight by 2 head teachers from the Vale of Glamorgan who have been identified as part of their recent Eston inspections to have interesting or innovative practice and have been invited by Eston to draft a case study. So we're joined tonight by Ruth Foster, the head teacher of Evenlode Primary, and Katie Williams, the head teacher of Romilly Primary. And they'll be joining us at the end of the paper to give a short update about their case study for Eston. In terms of the inspection outcomes for summer 2024, 4 schools were inspected during the summer term: Evenlode Primary, Roos Primary, Dinas Powys Primary and Romilly Primary. And you'll see that there's a summary of the inspection findings in Appendix 1. You'll also see, if you've had a look at the inspection reports, that 2 of those inspections were undertaken using the new Eston framework that's been piloted for September 2024. That is Roos Primary and Dinas Powys Primary. In terms of the 4 inspections, there was no follow-up work identified by Eston. And as I've mentioned, really, in terms of identifying interesting or innovative practice, 2 schools were invited to write a written case study for Eston. So there's been a case study of interesting or innovative practice identified as both Evenlode Primary and Romilly Primary. Those case studies have been identified and drafted, but have yet to be published by Eston. In terms of the pilot inspections, you will see as well that inspectors have identified interesting or innovative practice in both schools, and these are highlighted in what we call a short spotlight or cameos. So for Hwys Primary, there's a cameo outlining how the school is developing pupils' social, emotional and personal skills effectively. And for Dinas Powys Primary, there's a spotlight that highlights the transition for pupils from years 2 to 3, their behaviour policy, and how tracking is impacting positively on pupils' attendance. In terms of the schools in statutory follow-up category, we've got 2 schools remaining in special measures. That's Ysgol Pen-y-Garth and Pencoetra High. You will see in the report that there's a reference to the visit from Estyn in July 2024 to Pencoetra. You will see that the visit focused on recommendation 4 relating to ALN and recommendation 5 focusing on pupils' development and standards of skills. Estyn, in terms of ALN, recognised the recent and substantial changes made in staffing to support ALN at the school. There's a new Elenco at the school, an assistant Elenco, and other key staff members have been appointed. There's also a recognition to the fact there's been a lot of training ongoing for the new members of staff, and also the fact that most individual development plans, IDPs, are now in place. There's also recognition that there's relevant engagement with external services, and that's developing appropriately. There's also a reference to the work undertaken since February 2024, when a new interim executive head teacher was appointed at the school on improving behaviour across the school. And Estyn have noted that this work is helping to create a much calmer atmosphere in the school. And I'm just conscious that this was commented by Scrutiny members at the meeting back in July. There's also a reference to the initial work that has been done in relation to developing skills provision at the school, but there's a recognition that there's further work to be undertaken here, and that sort of this work is just, in a sense, in its infancy. In terms of attendance, there's recognition that there's a more strategic approach to developing attendance. There's an appointment now of a family engagement officer and pastoral support assistant. There's also the school working closely and continuing to work closely with the local authority. But there's also a very clear message by the school, from the local authority and from Estyn, that attendance remains a significant concern, particularly persistent absence and the attendance of pupils eligible for free school meals. In terms of Pen-y-Garth, Estyn didn't undertake a visit during the summer term, but did visit the school last week, and we will have formal notification and report following that meeting later on this term. But in terms of their progress against recommendations, you'll see that, sort of comprehensive arrangements are now in place for self-evaluation across the school, and the senior leadership team now work closely together to monitor progress and to monitor provision. The leaders then, as a result of that monitoring, have a clear and sound understanding of strengths and areas for development. There's also engagement from parents and carers and pupils into the self-evaluation. And there's also, as well, quality assurance processes to support improvements in provision, and in particular, for example, the methods of teaching, reading and writing. So there's a lot of support ongoing for teachers in terms of professional learning and in terms of monitoring and team teaching and so forth. And the standard of teaching is improving. However, there does remain some elements of variability. In terms of pupils' skills, again, teachers have been well supported through professional learning and guidance materials. And as with the quality of teaching, there is improvement evidence, but there remains elements of variability. In terms of assessment and feedback from pupils, again, there's more frequent opportunities for pupils to improve their work and to respond to feedback. And this is work that's further developing as the term moves forward. In terms of the report as well, there's also a reference to Llanfair Primary. Llanfair is in Estyn review. We are awaiting Estyn to have, for a meeting or a visit to the school to monitor progress in relation to their recommendations. As it stands, the school is making strong progress against the 3 recommendations. Leadership now is developing well. They're working closely with the cluster and have made amendments to the curriculum. And there's also now a suitable range of provision to improve pupils' independence and access to more challenging activities. So that's a brief overview of the paper report in terms of the update in terms of Estyn from the summer term. I'm now going to invite Ruth Foster to begin with from Evenlode Primary to talk about their case study that's been identified as an interesting or innovative practice from Estyn. Diolch yn fawr, Ruth.
Hello, Ruth, are you having problems there? Hello, Ruth, are you there, please?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, are you there, Ruth? Do you have problems there sharing?
Yeah. I did, yeah. I'll just have another go. If need be, I can do it without the screen. Okay. Okay, is that sharing yet?
Not yet, no.
No.
What we can do is I can share the screen on your behalf, Ruth, so we'll just switch over to my device. Just bear with me.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. There we go. That should be sharing for everybody. Ruth, just give me a nod when you want to move to the next slide. That'd be great. Thanks.
Will do. That's fantastic. Thank you, Gareth. I'm Ruth Foster. I'm the head teacher at Evenlode Primary School, and we're based on 2 sites. Evenlode Nursery is at the Butte Lane site. We amalgamated with Butte Cottage Nursery in September 2022. And at our main site, we have reception to Year 6, and we have 2 classes in each year group. We were inspected at the end of April, and as part of the inspection, Estyn asked us to write a case study on our reflective culture across the community, and the lead inspector talked about this constant feedback loop that we have. So I'll talk about 3 aspects of that tonight. So one area that we've really looked at and kind of been really reflective is the needs and context of our community and how we develop that. So, for example, we set up a parents forum that's really well established now. That parents forum meets half-termly. We have a standard agenda where we share something from school that parents want to know more about. For example, how we support children with additional learning needs, aspects of curriculum, etc. And then we will have feedback and dialogue about issues that may be cropping up, areas of interest. And that's been a really reflective and good way to work with our parents and our parent representatives. and we've made changes based on that parents forum. For example, we've made changes to how we organise our sports day. We've had a look and talk to our parents about our homework policy and how that's operating. We're making changes to that. And currently we're working with our parents on mobile phones and smartphones. We've got a very active Even Load community group of parents that are working with the smartphone-free childhood movement. So through that mechanism, we've been able to facilitate workshops for parents to give them more information. So that's kind of a really integral way of looking at our needs and context of our community at those points in time. A really impactful piece of community reflection that we've done has been the involvement in the anti-racism action research in the Vale of Glamorgan. We were one of the schools in the first cohort working with Rachel Clark and Martin Coles, and that's been hugely impactful and reflective for us to think about our practice, both personally and professionally, and what our culture looks like, what our ethos looks like, what our curriculum looks like. And we set time aside for staff to come together to really reflect on key texts we wanted them to look at, action research, and to be in safe spaces to talk to each other and kind of reflect on where they were and where school was. That's been hugely impactful, and we have a new vision based on the work that we've done, and our curriculum is evolving through that as well. We have on the next slide, Gareth, if it works, there's a little clip of a teacher who's going to share her reflections on the anti-racism work.
Yeah, I'm having problems playing the video, maybe because it's not a saved document.
Don't worry, that's fine. I can move on from that one. I've given an outline of that, so that's okay.
Okay.
Great, thank you. So if we can move to the next slide then. Thank you. So obviously school development, self-evaluation process, we've got to be continually reflective here. This slide is just to show that it really is a process. It isn't a document, hence the annotations, hence post-it notes, etc. But we have kind of key strands that lead into our termly self-evaluations where we reflect on our practice and pedagogy. One key strand of this is our people progress meetings. They do what they say on the tin. They look at people progress. So we meet with teachers, or I meet with teachers, and in those meetings we will discuss people progress. But they've really evolved over time. They're half-termly, they are half a day each half term, and actually they've evolved to be really professional reflection of what is going well, what is working well in practice, what's going well in pedagogy, what are the barriers, how are the themes that we're picking up on school priorities going, and they really feed back into that process here that you can see evidence of, and where we move on to the next term. We also have coaching for teachers. That is fairly new. So we use the goal model, the GROW model. So that's setting a goal, looking at the reality, looking at the options, and what will we do next. So again, the opportunity for teachers to come and speak to the deputies in our case, and they will just reflect on their own practice, and the agenda is there. So it's time set aside for them to reflect on where they are in their kind of career and their sort of professional pedagogy. I talked about action research as well. We also obviously undertake action research with the curriculum and pedagogy. So last year we looked in particular at adaptive teaching and metacognition. We can move to the next slide now. Thank you, Gareth. Okay, so learners and how they reflect on their learning on the world around them. So we have what we call our hook and book curriculum. And in our hook and book curriculum that we've constructed, we have a termly focus on a concept and a novel or a series of texts and big questions. And again, that's evolved over time, that children will generate their questions and what they want to find out about that area of learning, that topic, and the lines of inquiry that they want to take. So this is just an example in year 5, how that looks over time. So you can't see it very well, but there are questions that the children have generated, and then there are little ticks, and that's the feedback of learning over time. So the children will reflect on their learning weekly with a teacher, and they'll add to those and reflect on what that looks like. Children also have learning logs in year 5 and 6, where they can reflect on their own learning and present that however they wish. And those are just some of the ways that we show children, give the children the opportunity to plan and lead their own learning. I think we can move on to the next slide now. Thank you, Gareth. Okay. opportunity to reflecting on our world. So again, this is about children thinking critically and reflectively about the world they belong in. So we last year had a fantastic project, Lead Creative Schools, where children looked at identity and belonging. We visited the Picton Museum, the Picton exhibition in the National Museum, and looked at identity, belonging and slave trade and what did that look like, and really reflected on all of that. And we have dance projects as well, where we thought about what does connecting look like, what does belonging look like for us. And if you can move to the next slide, please, Gareth. And finally, I don't think this video will work, but one of the things we implemented this 2 years ago, is philosophy for children. So again, this is very much about children reflecting on the world, reflecting on those big ideas, those concepts that we've talked about within the curriculum, and being able to talk about issues like freedom, for example. What does freedom look like? Who needs power? What does survival look like? So a range of activities linked to our curriculum, and children will use that philosophical inquiry to build on each other's ideas, to listen, to understand there are other views, and to move their own learning on and hear different points of view. So that's really helping them to be caring, critical thinkers, creative and collaborative. So there's just some of the ways that we use reflective practice across our school in Evenlode. Thank you for that, Gareth.
Diolch yn fawr, Ruth, for that. And for members, just drawing members' attention, Evenlode was one of the case studies that we had as part of the RVE presentation back in July. And we saw some clips of pupils talking about the P4C, Philosophy for Children, approaches. Then the slightly younger pupils. Then I think they were year 1 or year 2, if I remember rightly. So diolch yn fawr iawn, Ruth, for that. And I'll now move on and invite Katie Williams to present. Katie is the head teacher of Romiley Primary. Diolch, Katie.
Hello, Katie, are you there, please? Katie Williams, are you okay to present, please? Hi, Katie.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yep.
Hi. I am trying to just share my screen.
Okay, again, if it doesn't work, I do have a copy, so we can manage it that way.
I might just need some time to link. Nothing's happening yet.
Okay, should I share on your behalf? It's
Yeah, do you want to do that?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh,
There we go.
okay. Fab. So we were asked to do our case study around the culture of improvement to do even better and the professional learning that we have in place that impacts on teaching and learning. So if you move to the next slide for me, thank you. Thanks. So this is the context of Romiley, just so that you know. Next slide. You might have to keep clicking, thanks. So we're a 3-form entry school. We've got between 680 and 750 children on roll between the ages of 3 to 11. The reason why it makes Romiley such a large school compared to other 3-form entry is because of the 130 place nursery that we have. We've got 15% of our children are free school meals. However, 18.7% of them are transitionally protected altogether, and 4.5% of our children are ALN. So our vision at Romiley is about delivering outstanding access. And alongside that, if you keep clicking, it will come on, sorry. We genuinely believe that if we deliver outstanding access and attitudes, we will get outstanding achievement. So that's the vision, and we do it through our mission statement. So if you do keep clicking away, I'm afraid. Our mission statement is about learning and growing and succeeding together. And that's very much about the adults too. It's not, sometimes we impose a lot of this on our children, but we have to look within ourselves first. So if you keep going, that's it. Very much again around our values. We're a values-driven school. And if you keep clicking, they'll come up for you. And again, it's saying about those values being displayed by the adults first. Again, sometimes I think that you can say to the children, these are the values that you need to show, but we have to show them and really live and breathe them first. And those there are our values at Romilly. Okay. So the background of our effective, keep going. Sorry. Of our effective practice is that we genuinely believe that the quality of teaching matters. We genuinely know and believe that it has the biggest impact on closing the gap, ensuring progress and equity of provision for all. For us, teaching and learning is curriculum. So it's not just about what you're teaching, it's about how you're teaching. And we really focus on what matters the most, despite the distractions and confusion sometimes. I think that what Eston commented on was how we prioritise within all the national priorities that are out there. We have to, as schools, prioritise ourselves some of those priorities. Otherwise, it just becomes it can be overwhelming. And we hold true to our vision and values throughout the whole of that, which is about our access and about our attitudes. And we do have a true belief that all teachers will and they can deliver an excellent, teaching and learning experience, but they can only do that with the right culture and support. So how did we do it and still do it? The ultimate goal for us was about creating a culture whereby everyone really has this want to be even better. And that goes back to our mission statement of learning and growing together as adults. And it is reached through trust and collaboration and action research. And I think sometimes trust is such a misunderstood, it's a word that can be put out there, but to show trust, you've got to share your own mistakes, as well as celebrating other things. And I think that has to be led from the top. It's not just about the mistakes that teachers make and successes, but as a senior leadership team as well, so that we're in it together. Our ethos as a leadership team is about low threat, but with high challenge, but it's not high threat, and low challenge. It's definitely that way around. We don't do lesson observations, which I know is something that, can be used as part of a monitoring and evaluation cycle, but I just think you don't get enough out of, it's lesson observations can be one-off in a year, but instead we replace it with learning walks and triad work. That's teachers working together with each other in threes, with teachers videoing themselves and really focusing on really small areas of teaching and learning, not a whole lesson, and mastery of that. And the focus for us in the beginning was directed by the leadership team as to what we felt that from the learning walks, we felt that the whole school could focus on. But then it moved on to teachers identifying their own areas that they wanted to work on. An opportunity and time always given to practice those focuses, and then we review the improvements together. So from that, especially with the videoing, which was a fantastic way of doing it, excellent practice of an area could be identified. And then this was really important about them giving their permission, because it was about that. We asked the teachers, if an excellent area was identified, if they would share and be happy to share this element. And not everybody is, and that's fine. And we used a teaching library platform for that then as a resource bank of excellent snippets of practice, so that everybody could see what good looks like in action, and also who they can go to if they want support in a particular area, but also if they want to look at that in private. That's a way of doing it in that low threat way. And again, it's in many form of many areas. Very small videos could just be focused on partner talk or quality questioning or peer assessment or one-to-one tuition. They're just examples. Monitoring and evaluation of the impact of learning was done through professional discussions, progress meetings, book looks, listening to learners, learning walks, relevant data. And I put tiny writing there about it being relentless. Estin wanted to use the word relentless in the report. I think relentless can have negative connotations sometimes. I think what they're trying to say that it's all year, every year. It's not just one off or twice a year. But again, it's done in that low threat way, not in a high threat way. And again, not just done by the leadership team, but also by the staff and the governors. And I think this is a really important element, was about the training that we gave then. To staff, everything was transparent. You know, when we do a book look, let's train you up on how to do a book look so that you do it before we do it, and the governors as well, because they needed training up for them to be able to challenge us and actually really get to know what's going on in the school. So impact, you know, there was lots of wonderful things said in our Estin report. These are just a couple of things that I brought out, which is about that strong culture of self-improvement and reflection, you know, and that it really contributed to us to being able to deliver high standards of well-being and significant improvements to the quality of teaching. I've put in there, this was somebody that came out and was working with a school with teaching and learning who was actually in Estin, and said, you know, that they looked, when they came into lessons, looking at the staff, when I walked into your classes and their desire to succeed being palpable. I think you can see it and feel it in the school. And about the governors, because of the training and because they're in the school and really getting to know what's going on and understanding how to carry out their roles, they fulfill those roles then exceptionally well. They've got that first-hand knowledge about the quality of teaching and learning, and they're really knowledgeable because of, you know, the things, and it just helps them be those fully informed critical friends. And this is just to say about further things that we've done in terms of, it doesn't just stop at Romilly. We feel that our children, it's about cradle to career from, you know, 3 years up to 18, that we have really strong links and relationship with the local high school. We have collaborated together to further enhance professional learning, not just of Romilly, but that of the staff in the high school. And we share excellent practice across both settings. It definitely is a two-way developmental process. It's not about the high school coming down and telling us what to do, you know, or us the other way around. It's about how we can learn and gain ideas from the excellent practice in both schools and use that then in our own classes within our own schools to aid and improve just that collaborative work and the transition through. So that's it, I think.
Diolch yn fawr, Katie, for that. So hopefully, you know, between the presentation from Evenlow Primary and Romilly Primary, members have had a flavour of the interesting and innovative case studies that have been identified by Estin, and we'll make sure that once they're published, that the information is shared with members. So that's it in terms of this agenda item. But if anyone has any questions, please do ask. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Caris, and Katie and Ruth as well. Councillor Payne.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie and Ruth. That's brilliant. It was one of the kind of perspectives that we wanted on scrutiny as well. So it's nice to see that in action. There's one thing I think it was Katie about. I'm interested in the low threat comment that you made. So I don't know if Caris or Katie can explain kind of what that means.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Katie.
Yeah. I think it's just, I think sometimes it can feel like a done to process as a teacher in a school that's, you know, all teachers come into the profession, no teacher comes into the profession to not be good at their job. They come in, they really do care, but sometimes it's not a neglect, it's just they can be left in their own classroom. It can be quite a lonely experience. And I think sometimes, you know, I mean, I've experienced different leadership teams where I have experienced that high threat where it's like someone's coming in, or I'm going to do a lesson observation. I'm going to observe you for a whole hour for once in a year, and I'm going to tell you, you know, a few things that are going well, but then I'm going to tell you where it's all going wrong. And I think, or where you need to improve, you know. And I think that we're all in this together. We all make mistakes together. We all are learning together. And it doesn't matter if your lesson didn't go well. In fact, let's celebrate it. Let's have a bit of a laugh about, and how can we, you know, let's have another go. And my goal has always been, as a head teacher, the day that you have your teachers come to you asking for you to come and observe them or to pop in and have a look at them teach, that's when you know you've made it. And if you have that vision and goal, if you're going to lead through, you'll never get that through a high threat sort of way where you're doing it to the teacher. You're wanting the teacher to know that learning is about making mistakes. You're not going to be caught. You're not there to be caught out, or, you know. And so for me, that I've been ahead of 2 schools now, and I've used the same sort of ethos, and it works, you know, in terms of creating that growth kind of culture.
Thank you, Katie. I quite like that, and I quite like that part of your presentation, which was about making mistakes, because you know that there is that perfectionism that, you know, we don't have as humans. So, you know, that's kind of reflected. It was one of the things that was brought up I'm a Palmerston school governor as well, and I kind of like that switch.
It's
and
got
I like that approach that we're doing in the Vale.
Yeah.
So thanks for that. I just wondered about the terminology. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Marshalsea.
Hi there. I just had a question for Ruth. Really interesting presentation and reflection. Thanks so much. I was just wondering how the ethos of reflection is sort of embedded throughout marking, and how, as a school, marking is done, particularly in Key Stage 2, I guess.
Yeah, so we use live marking, so that's marking in the moment. So the teacher will be, it's verbal feedback, but there might be little signals and cues as well. So this is great. Have a little think. I'm going to come back around and see how you've improved that. So that's continual reflection of the teacher, so they know how to move that lesson forward if there are misconceptions, whether they need to pull children together for mid-plenaries, but also for children as well. So they are constantly reflecting on their own learning. See, actually, and again, it's the same as Katie is saying, there's a mistake there, but mistakes are great, because that's how we learn, and that's how we improve, and that's how we move on. So that is something that's embedded across the whole school, because it's that continual, and again, it's that looking at progress all the time, not at the end point of the lesson. So we're continually reflecting on, where does this lesson need to go at the next point now, and the child's doing the same thing as well.
Thank you. Yeah, like live marking, I think it's great, really, isn't it? Because it gives teachers time, and actually, I think particularly primary school children a day later can't necessarily read and reflect on what they did the day before. So it really does need to be in the moment. I look back on my teaching career, think about the time wasted writing spiels at the end of the day. Absolutely, and actually, I think it was for the teacher, really, and for the senior leadership team, rather than actually the children being able to reflect. So it'd be good to know what the policy is in the Vale, I guess, moving forward with that, because I think it's something that we should try and embed across all schools.
And I think as well, it's the progress of the children, because, you know, you get to the lesson, the time's gone then, hasn't it? So it is that continual reflection throughout the lesson. Where do we need to move to next? And quite often we'll see teachers will go, oh, hang on a minute, I've spotted something here, here and here. Can we just stop for a quick mid-plenary? Let's just have a look at it. And again, that's great learning, isn't it? That's great assessment for learning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Lynch-Wilson.
Hi both. I'd just like to thank Ruth and Katie for wonderful presentations. I think it's sometimes we forget that these reports are about real teachers and real schools, and it does really bring it all home how hard everybody works and new innovations, and how people are trying to bring our children forward by having real teachers explaining to us about the reports and how they go about it, because I know it's a very stressful time for some teachers sometimes. And, I think if you're stressed, then the children are stressed. So to provide a different way of doing things is good to hear. Thank you both.
Thanks, Julie. Councillor Asbury.
Thank you. This is for Katie, really. I'm just very pleased to see your comment saying no lesson observations. I think, generally speaking, that is high threat to teachers. And I think teachers can be up for goodness knows how many hours a night before to dot I's, cross T's. And I think it's far too stressful for a majority of teachers. So I'm very glad to see somebody's recognising that. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Anne. Claire.
Hi, well, to both Ruth and Katie, many congratulations. It's 5 weeks since I stopped being a head teacher, so can fully understand where you're coming from. I'm just so pleased for both of you that your hard work and your wonderful attitude has been recognised. And just a question for Ruth, really. I was delighted to hear you mention coaching, because until recently I was training coaches for Central South Consortium, and it's something that I really value. So I just wanted to ask you, how have you found that in your school? And you're doing it, and just to check, you were doing that in-house or outside? And really, is this something that you know is happening in other Vale of Glamorgan schools? I'd just be interested to know, but well done you, because I think it's so crucial to development of staff.
Thank you. Yes, I am aware it's happening in the schools as well. The way we have implemented it is it's very kind of, and it's a bit like Katie was saying, that very low threat. So with the GROW model, so it's basically, it's the teachers, because we just do it with teachers at the moment. It's teachers' agenda. They work with the deputy heads. I don't necessarily, or shouldn't know what necessarily goes on in those meetings. It's not about what's fed back to me. So it is between them and the deputy, and they will go along and they will choose what they want to talk about. So it could be pedagogy, it could be organisation, it could be anything. So they will go along with that agenda and just say, okay, can we have a professional conversation about that? So it is new to us. Teachers have really appreciated the opportunity. And again, it's the same thing we say about time. There is not always time, and we have to invest in time for these things to happen, don't we? So in our PPA sessions, planning, preparation, assessment time, teachers are incredibly busy doing the operational and the planning, and there isn't always the time to think about things. So it's new to us, but we then want to use that kind of to move on to think about the peer aspect of coaching as well. So we've tried a little mini kind of teachers working together on kind of what we call it our making learning sticks. What are the key strategies you can see in each other's classroom? And again, just have an informal chat to each other. What can you see going on? So we're hoping to develop that now. But I absolutely agree. Coaching is crucial to reflection and moving forward. It's just key. Yes.
And if staff see that as low threat as well, because it's not judgmental, absolutely. It's just about helping them. It was really refreshing for me to hear you say that. So well done. You've done brilliantly. Thank you very much, Auntie Katie, for your presentations.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Over to Councillor Hennessy.
Hello, thank you, Ruth and Katie, for your excellent report. I have a question for Katie, if that's okay. How are you finding to implement everything you want to do at the school presently with the state of the school budgets?
Difficult. I think
that more specific, if that's okay.
Yeah, we have to still, obviously my deficit is in a situation which is, it's quite large. But we still have to deliver priorities. Sorry. That's my dog. We still have to deliver priorities and we still have to spend money on those priorities. But again, it's just trying to work out, especially with teaching and learning, what we tend to do is look at using things like the Education Endowment Foundation of what is the lowest cost but the highest impact. And with teaching and learning, I'm not the bit that costs money, and I think Ruth was talking about it as well, about is investing in the professional learning, and that's investing in the time. So, but if that can be lower cost, but teaching and learning, and a lot of what we do, especially through, if I'm doing my school improvement plan, it actually comes at zero cost. What costs me in my budget is the staff, in terms of staffing the school. And I think I talked about it a while ago about I have to have teachers in front of children, and I have to have support for children, and I've got to make sure children are safe and the building is safe and so forth. And that's majority of where the money goes. But when it comes to teaching and learning, it's relatively low cost because a lot of it is in-house. I lead a lot of the training. I have a senior leadership team that can, a capacity in the senior leadership team to be able to go out and support the teaching and learning. And it's that time that's invested in that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Great, thank you both. Any other questions, comments or queries? I can't see any, so thank you for those very informative presentations. And if there's nothing else from councillors, I move that we note the reports, and having considered the inspection outcomes of the 4 schools inspected in the summer and the progress of the schools in special measures, we congratulate the schools with no ESTIM follow-up activity and thank Katie and Ruth for their extremely informative presentations. If I could have a seconder for that. Emma Goodjohn, thanks very much. And good night, Katie and Ruth. You're welcome to stay and watch, or I'm sure you have other things to do, so thanks very much for that. Moving on to agenda item 4 then. It's the primary and secondary school attendance update, and it's over to Amanda. Hi.
Good evening, all. You will have received the updated report for the primary and secondary school attendance update, and I'm just going to talk you through a few key points within that report. As we know, the local authority are responsible and have a duty to ensure that all school-aged children receive suitable and full-time education within schools or otherwise, and that falls within the remit of the inclusion service. As we know, good school attendance leads to good learning, as well as giving the children within the Vale the best possible chance in life in terms of not just academic achievement, but social, emotional development and future employability, which falls in line with the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act, as well as tackling poverty and more equal Wales. There's been a national decline in school attendance figures in both primary and secondary schools since COVID-19 pandemic. And that has been seen across, we'll have seen that nationally and within Wales. Within the Vale of Glamorgan, both secondary and primary schools have seen an improvement in attendance in the last 2 years, but we are not back to the pre-COVID levels that we used to have. At the end of July 2024, primary's overall attendance was 92.4%. So we did see an increase of 0.8% increase from 22-23. Secondary's overall attendance was 85.63% at the end of July 24, and that saw an increase of 1.03% since 22-23. As you can see, the attendance for both primaries and secondaries are still lower than we'd expect. Although we did see a better increase within secondaries, there is a bigger deficit. But by the end of July 24, in relation to the All Wales data, we were ranked 7th in Wales with an overall 89.4%, which was 0.4% above the national average. We also, over last year, saw an increased impact to attendance with an increase in fixed term exclusions. To put it in perspective, 2,667 days were lost last year to fixed term exclusions within both our primary and secondary schools, which saw an increase of 1,003 days lost from last year. We also saw an increase in permanent exclusions, which rose to 12 last year. So what measures have we put in place as a local authority and within the inclusion service? We've updated our attendance policy and sent to all schools along with an updated attendance toolkit, which helps facilitate for schools to manage their attendance. We've also updated other policies in line with the new Welsh Government guidance of the Belonging, Engaging and Participating document that was released in November 23. Due to the high service and demand from schools in regard of needing support for attendance, we have a triage process which gives clear guidance, offers support and advice, and offers a range of support for all schools to work with learners and families and how we can work alongside schools to do that. We do focus on what schools are doing within internally, because they are best placed to deal with attendance. But when we offer that range of support to help support them, because we do know, as we've just heard from 2 schools now, the pressures on schools is immense as well. We collect monthly data and we share that amongst the schools. Within that data, we're looking at the persistent absentee figure, which last year the Welsh Government increased that from 80% to 90%. So that significantly increased the numbers of learners who are persistently absent within the local authority. However, 90% is 19 days lost days lost to school. So that's quite significant. So I think it was a good move by the Welsh Government to increase that to 90%, focus on the improvement. The data also looks at vulnerabilities such as additional learning needs, whether children are looked after, the global majority, gender, as well as looking at particular cluster concerns, such as if there were any attendance concerns within certain year groups. And as well as that, it also looks at the number of fixed term exclusions issued by the school. As I say, this data is shared amongst schools and shared between schools as well, which I think is really helpful for schools to see where they sit within local schools to them. And they also share their data with their family of schools as well, which is also really helpful when we're looking at a wider approach. We as a service analyse the data so we can identify any areas of need and concern within schools and how to target our approach as well, how to target our service offer. This year, we extended our attendance campaign, which, as most of you will know, started in May 23. It's been revised for this academic year. There's been some new banners, some new colours, but then there's clear photographic messages, really, about that schools don't just offer academic learning, but they also offer a wide range of curriculum beyond the academic learning, which includes, your social activities, your sporting activities, and socialisation, having friends, and which is all embellishes what schools can offer. We've kept the same slogan, "Miss School, Miss Out," and that has been alongside all our documentation, and is just a key message that we're sending out to everybody within the VAL, all learners within the VAL. We also have a collaborative approach with other agencies and partners, because we can't do this alone. Attendance is everyone's business. Those collaborative partners include our additional learning needs team, our educational psychologist service, YGIS, Youth Justice and Early Service Intervention, InReach, which is the mental health branch. So we work alongside many of these partners within schools and within our service. This is also in line with the new ESTIN framework, which when they look at schools, they're looking at how they manage attendance and working in partnerships as well with other agencies. Examples of these partnership workings are we put in workshop sessions within primary age children within the schools, worked with children and parents to explore barriers to attendance, and looked at strategies and how parents and schools could manage these challenges. That was particularly effective with our year 6 groups, particularly bearing in mind with the transition up to secondary school in year 7. We also work alongside our educational psychologist service, and we've developed a shared approach to EBSA, which is our emotionally based school avoidance children. that is still a particular problem since the pandemic, and that is something that's worked really well, and we're working together alongside the service within schools. We've also started a new trial within with the enforcement service within the local authority. That's been rolled out to initially 2 secondary schools, and now has been rolled out to now 5 secondary schools, where the schools can request the engagement service to go to do a house visit where families are at risk of being issued a fixed penalty notice. And that is something that schools can issue if all barriers have been explored that is preventing children attend. All support's been offered, and there is still persistent absenteeism and non-engagement from families and learners. And the message is clear from the enforcement service that these families are at risk of being issued a fixed penalty notice. And I think it's particularly effective because it is just a message to say they're at risk, and it encourages then families to link in with the schools to discuss what their problems are and to work alongside the schools to support their child attending school. Because we have to bear in mind that under Section 444, the Education Act, a parent is guilty of an offence if they fail to ensure that their child attends school regularly, and that underpins everything we do. And the enforcement service have been out. We saw a 30% increase in the number of visits that they did, and we saw the impact in terms of attendance raising, which allows then schools to continue that engagement and relationships with the children when they're in school. So that's the really good sort of almost a kickstart, I suppose, where families might have been just ignoring the situation, not answering the phone, not sending their children in, and it allows the doors to be opened and for relationships to be built and barriers of non-attendance to be explored and prevented. We also have, we're about to embark upon our first joint wellbeing and attendance forum in the end of this month for schools. That's to replace these individual forums, which were being held individually. So there's a wellbeing forum and there's an attendance forum. And that's because we could identify actually the collaborative approach. These are lead people in schools, lead senior members of schools, which actually if they work together, they can work towards increasing attendance, looking at those relationships within schools, and it all links in. So we felt that was a better approach rather than having a separate forums to sort of like have their own, to really look at key internal collaborative approaches within schools and not see attendance being that issue and that lead person's concern, and wellbeing being another area, because they are interlinked. We've also this term attended and participated in open evenings. We went to a Year 7 open evening. Obviously, that was quite successful because we were able to then engage with parents and learners who attended the meeting. And it's to bring a bit more open response for our service. Often families don't know about us until schools submit a referral, and it feels very negative. So it's an opportunity for us to be open and transparent about what we do, about how we'd like to support, and so a bit more preventative work. We also attended community events over the summer in line with that as well. And that was, again, a really positive opportunity to meet with families in a really positive environment, but to talk about what we do. And we were able to find out, we were able to ask learners what they liked about school, what they didn't like about school. So we really got a really good insight about what our learners are feeling about school. And they got a good insight to what we do as a service. So we know that parents can contact us if they've got any concerns. And again, before it escalates to significant concerns. We also offer training for both for schools and school governors, and the wide range of training that we offer includes attendance concerns, dealing with exclusions, children missing education, elective home education. So that training, we respond to schools' needs accordingly. We do offer the package, a full package, but we also do bespoke training as well for individual schools where we can identify need. We also are doing a collaborative approach with the parenting service. They have a 6 or 7 week programme where they go to schools with identified families that schools have identified where some areas of concern, and they do a workshop 1 day a week, and we're part of that workshop. We are going in on week 5 to discuss school attendance. alongside with the parenting service and with the parents to discuss barriers to attendance and strategies that the parents can use. And I think that's going to be really positive. We also have weekly interface meetings with our additional learning needs service, which is really helpful because we can identify where we have possible concerns, where we have children who we have identified as additional learning needs, and schools will be putting their referrals through, looking at their IDPs, looking at potential exclusions, so we can try and get ahead of any attendance concerns with our partners. And that's working really well, looking at potential risks for some of these learners as well. We're also developing our family-friendly policies for parents and children, so that actually they can really access what our service offers and what those policies stand for. They're going to be part of it. We're going to the student councils to ask them what their thoughts are on some of these family-friendly policies, and so they can be very much part of it. And we'll then roll them out into schools so that, again, the children can have a voice within our policies, so much so that they know the expectations. Because I think sometimes we talk to parents a lot and we talk in very adult language, very professional language. So it's making our policies and our expectations of our learners within the VAL accessible to families and children. We also offer a targeted approach for schools where we've identified need. One such targeted approach is for a secondary school, which is in special measures, which has been identified as having very significantly low school attendance. So we've continued to do this. We started this last academic year, and this continues, where we have a dedicated team involvement. We have dedicated members of team where they will go into the schools and work within the school referrals. So there's more relationship between our service and all the senior team, the head of years, the SLT, so that they can contact us and we can have that more direct communication relationship. We have regular key meetings with these staff as well. We look at bespoke training for the staff and governors, and that's been quite successful, where there's been some pockets of where people felt that they hadn't identified staff that had an identified need, so we could roll that out. And as well as that, we can look at extended partnership working, such as with the parenting service, with our YDES and with our educational psychologist team. We've also extended this targeted support to another secondary school, which we've noticed has had a significant drop in attendance, that being Antwerp Major High School. There was a 6.8% drop in attendance from pre-COVID levels, and as well as this significant decrease in attendance, we've seen a number of fixed-term exclusions escalate last year, and a number of permanent exclusions from the school. So we've offered a more targeted approach, which includes regular meetings to be held for advice and guidance. We've encouraged links with partnership services, and we've identified a lead officer support, again, for that continuity of support within the school. All our approaches that I've discussed today and are in the report are measured for positive impact. And I feel that by analysing the regular data alongside, by analysing the regular data, we can identify where they're working well. But that comes key alongside our regular communication and visits to all our schools, which we all do throughout our team. We have regular meetings. We endeavour to visit all schools throughout the year, and we do that. So we know what our school needs are. We've got good relationships with our head teachers and with our attendance lead staff, and I think that really helps enable to do some preventative work, as well as looking at some of those real concerns, which sometimes we just get stuck, what can we do next, what is best for this learner, so we can identify what is needed and what approaches are best. All our approaches run alongside the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act 2015, as well as our Youth Engagement and Progression Framework, and as well as I've mentioned before, the Child Poverty Strategy. And all these strategies as well are also underpinned within our service plan for standards and provision within this academic year. If you've got any questions, please ask.
Thanks very much, Amanda. Councillor Hennessy.
Hello, Amanda. Thank you for your report. Excellent report. Just one question. You mentioned fixed penalties for parents whose children don't go to school in primary and secondary. how many of them have we actually implemented currently?
So last year we actually issued, and the number I think is around, and I will check this for you, and I will get back to you, is around 60. That is significantly lower than some other local authorities within Wales, where they've issued about up to 500 in some local authorities. I guess the reasons for that is because we would want to make sure that we've offered support. The schools have offered support within their framework. We want to make sure that where possible, all barriers for absence has been identified, and that support has been offered and issued. And I think schools, coming back from the pandemic, FPNs weren't issued, and schools have been reluctant in issuing them. However, I think it's been really reflective that we've got to the stage with some families where there's been a lot of support, a lot of services around the family and the learner. Schools have got a robust support system within their schools, and there still has been cases where there's been persistent absenteeism. So schools will then unauthorised, and it's unauthorised absence, I hasten to add, that could be issued a fixed penalty notice. So I feel that that this year we might see an increase, and I think we do need to see an increase. I think schools are a bit reluctant because they feel that issuing a fixed penalty notice isn't necessarily effective. I personally feel that actually talking about fixed penalty notices are effective. If we talk about them from the very beginning and say there is a risk that actually parents are legally responsible for ensuring that their children attend regularly, and if they don't, they could be issued an FPN. I think that message is a really clear one, and I think that can prevent a fixed penalty notice being issued. So I very much strongly feel that schools need to be talking about this within their school environment. We will talk about this when we deal with cases, because we would all want to, and I'm sure we all feel the same, we all want to prevent any family being issued a fixed penalty notice. It's only issued where all that support and all that level, that everything has been put in place and there still is non-engagement, and we know that there's just, perhaps, a child refusing and the parent not supporting what that refusal looks like. There's many reasons really, where continued holidays or just continued absences where the parents aren't engaging with the schools. But I do feel that we can significantly reach a lot of families just by saying, actually, you're at risk of a fixed penalty notice, but we don't want to be issuing this. This is what you need to do. This is what we can do. And the enforcement service trial, that's part of that, because that's another warning in effect.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Amanda. That was really comprehensive, and there's a lot of hard work that goes into this. And looking at the stats, it seems to have plateaued, and there's roughly around a 5 to 6% deficit, particularly in terms of secondary education. So it's become much wider than just attendance, like you say. So there's all of the work that goes around the parents and the family and stuff. But I'm wondering if you think there is a culture shift, and I'd be interested in, for that 5 to 6% deficit that we're working with, what are the, I'd be interested in insecure home situations, safeguarding, support for families. I'd be interested to know, are those the issues as well? Because it's around the family what they're looking at now. We're not just looking at around the child, are we? We're looking at the whole picture. So there's a lot of work that's going into this 5 to 6% that we're, trying to re-engage with, and I'm not sure where we go with it, Amanda, because it seems to be quite slow progress.
I think for those 5 or 6%, there is slow progress, and because we're working so much with that area, what we need to be really cautious about is that we aren't missing the learners who perhaps are missing 1 day a week or having a long weekend every month, because actually, to be under 90%, to be considered persistently absent, that's 19 school days missed, which is significant. That's 4 weeks. In terms of what you say about working with, about that whole concern around the learner, that is, that again, that's our partnership approach, and that's where we do work with children's children's services. We work with Families First Action Line, who often offer support within that, and indeed the parenting service is part of that, as well as the youth engagement. So there's a whole, we've worked with housing, because that could be, someone's been evicted and they're about to be evicted, and then they get a temporary home that's 10 miles away from the school. That has issues in itself. And then we go down the line of school transport, which I won't go down the line of now, but yeah, we do have to look at all these aspects, and it really, you really can't just look at attendance alone. You've got to look at what schools can offer. We talked about budget constraints today. And it is that approach. And one of the things, although our remit is attendance, we do signpost a lot. Obviously, we go to the homes, we can see the communities that the families are living in, and we can see, we have those conversations, and we build up relationships within those families to be able to signpost and be able to sort of identify what they look like to schools, because schools very much, they're not necessarily out in the home environment, so they don't actually see what that journey for that child, possibly from getting up in the morning, coming to school, what that might look like. It might be a whole morning lived before they even turn up at school. So we're able to share that with schools and work collaboratively with all the services to try and support that learner.
Thank you. And that is something that's why we question these things on scrutiny, because some child's journey, like you say, is significantly longer than other children's journey, and there needs to be some recognition of that in terms of we're talking about penalties and things like that. There's a lot of work that you're putting in before we would even think about penalties for these families. So thank you very much for that answer, Amanda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Councillor Marshalsea.
Thanks, Amanda. I was just wondering, I know that the Pencoetry attendance was quite low spring and summer. I was just wondering what's happened basically since September?
I have the data in front of me, but just while I'm pulling it up, because my computer crashed just before I came on, it started off really well, and there's been a dip. There has been a dip in attendance, and I think that's to be expected. We've probably seen that in all our schools, in truth, because again, we're looking at that 5 to 6% where they start off well and then they possibly drop. So we are, there are still concerns, and we're still working.
Can I ask what it was? Because I know it was 70% before.
Yes, I'm just looking now. Sorry, bear with me.
Don't worry.
Just scrolling down. If I don't have it now, I've got the persistent absentee figures, which isn't what you asked for. So that's what I've got up here. So I will get that. I will get that to you. But the number, I can tell you the number of persistently absentee is there's 50 over just over 50% of the school are under 90% attendance in September.
Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. Councillor Asbury.
Hi. I was just wondering, I think you mentioned training for governors to help with raising school attendance. Do you know what sort of training governors get now?
Yes, so we offer the full range, to be truthful with you. Exclusion training tends to be taken up by governors, because obviously they are part of the People Disciplinary Committee, so they're very much part of exclusions if they're over 15 days. So that's one of the training that is often taken up by governors. But we'd offer the full range to governors: pastoral support plans, attendance monitoring. One of the things we've talked about within schools when we go to school is having an attendance lead governor. So they have, they obviously have their key interests within attendance, so that they can work alongside the head teacher in looking at attendance and scrutinising that. So they could be part, they and any other governor could be part of any of the training package that we offer, and we roll it out within the evening. So obviously, governors can attend as well as the day, but they can come to our full training package.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Amanda, for the report and everything. It's not so much a question as more of a request for more information. I think it would be better if the report had the attendance records by school, I think, particularly if you're talking about holistic approaches, we are on the ground. We do know our communities. And if us on the committee and by definition councillors and the wards knew the figures, that perhaps that they could take action that could help. So basically, if it was possible to have this information, I know you can't give it to me now at a later date.
So just so I'm clear, so you'd like to see where every individual school within the local authority, where they are with their attendance?
Yes, please, if that's possible.
That's obviously that changes every month, obviously, as that goes. So we produce their monthly data. So I will see if that's possible for you.
Okay, okay. Just you know, it obviously not every month if it causes you a lot of work, but it would be useful to have it as, you know, this report when this report came out, for example.
I suspect it'd be really useful for you to look at the end of last year. The academic year will give you a good gauge as to where all our schools sit within the authority, because obviously you wouldn't want necessarily the data every month, but that would give you a good gauge of where our schools are sitting. So that would be good data to send you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen and Amanda, and obviously as Naomi asked about Pencoitra as well, if that could be sent to all councillors on the committee. On committee members, I think that'd be great if that's possible.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem.
Lovely, thank you for that. Councillor Hennessy.
Yes, sorry, Amanda. Following on what you spoke about to Anne Asprey about governor training, currently there is only 2 mandatory governor training things you have to do. Do you believe safeguarding should be a mandatory one as well for all governors?
I do. Safeguarding doesn't, well, it falls in everyone's remit, doesn't it? Actually, we're all responsible for safeguarding, and anybody who work within the Vale of Glamorgan have to attend statutory safeguarding training, as is right. So I do agree that I think that should be mandatory for all governors. But that isn't my that wouldn't be my that wouldn't be that wouldn't be for me to say, but that's my personal opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Birch.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. That was very comprehensive. I was very, very interested in that. And I wanted to pick up on something you were talking about the journey a child has to school. And it's not just about that literal physical journey. It's about overcoming all the barriers that any child may encounter in a home that is not supportive of the education system, where perhaps, there's chaotic lifestyles, children are not readied for school as we would want them to be. And I think that should be part of any governor training to do with attendance, because I think we assume that, all children come from homes where school is regarded as a priority, and children, are kind of like suited and booted and sent out the door at the right time to get to school on time. And we know that this is not the case, and that there are a significant number of children who come from homes where perhaps that's not valued. And so it's more difficult for them to overcome those particular hurdles. And I think that is something that should be part of training for governors, because I think that some people simply do not know that that's reality. And I think that you were talking about the holistic approach, going out and seeing where these children actually live, because some of them may have quite difficult challenges to overcome in order to be in the school system. I mean, I can think of children I've taught in the past who we didn't know what was going on with them. I had a boy he came into my year 7 form, and he was late consistently, so he was always in trouble. And after a couple of weeks, I kind of took him to one side, and he came out with, he had been washing and dressing his 3 small sisters and taking them to school every day because his mother was a long-term patient in a mental hospital, and his father was a taxi driver who worked overnight. And this only came to light because high school started at 20 to 9, and the primary school started at 9 o'clock. So he'd never been late before. But if we hadn't done some digging, we wouldn't have known. And that was a complete barrier, because he was beginning to be seen as somebody who wasn't reliable and wasn't there at the right time. And there was we were able to put things in place in order to make sure that he could be that attender. So, I think it's very important that governors who come into this with the best will in the world to help children perhaps don't have experience of those kind of difficulties that children may face. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. And of course, we've got an agenda item on governor training later, so a lot of comments the council has made will be relevant in that as well. Amanda, I just wanted to ask you about, it was section 211 in the report. It talks about a pilot project where the enforcement team undertook home visits to warn families of the risk of penal measures about non-attendance. Would you be able to sort of explain to us what those conversations look like on the door?
Yeah, sure. So they're obviously the members of the enforcement team where they are going to the door and they're talking to families that they are at risk of being issued a fixed penalty notice. They're not from our service, they are working alongside us. So it's a fairly straightforward conversation. This wouldn't be, the enforcement service wouldn't be knocking on the door as a sort of a first intervention with the family. This would be if schools are struggling to get the family to engage, if there's been meetings being booked and then families not turned up. So it's just a clear message that actually the failure for the attendance to increase and failure to engage with schools means you are at risk of a fixed penalty notice. At that point then, and the enforcement team, they work on a graduated response within all the stuff they do with the enforcement team, because actually what they're trying to do is prevent any enforcement, prevent any fixed penalty notice. And it's the same within the work they're doing here with us, whereby they are encouraging then the families then to contact the school to talk about what the issues are, what the barriers are, to say that actually the child needs to be, there are no reason for the child not to be attending school, they do need to be in school, but actually if you do have concerns, if you do have questions, you do have barriers, then please contact the schools. And the message is that although you're at risk of a fixed penalty notice, we don't want this to be issued. This is avoidable, but you do need to engage with the school moving forward.
Okay, great. Thank you, Amanda. I can't see anything else from committee members. So that was useful. So I move that we note the report and that the committee receives a further progress update report in 12 months. And obviously, as discussed earlier, about getting those statistics out to committee members, that'd be great. Thanks, Amanda.
No
and Councillor Hennessy seconded it, so thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers. Agenda item 5, Youth Service Update 23-24. Reece and Martin, I think we've got you for the next 3 agenda items.
You do, thank you, Chair. I'll be representing the next 2 reports, which is the Youth Service and the OTAS People Engagement, and then Peter will come in then for the next agenda item for the Youth Engagement Progression Framework, if that's okay. Thank you for obviously inviting us today. The report itself seeks to make elected members aware of the progress that's been made by the Youth Service, especially in the past year. It's good to kind of comment on the range of mechanisms that the Youth Service offer for 11 to 25-year-olds within the Vale of Glamorgan. This can range from our open access youth clubs, where young people can just walk in off the street into any of those community centres where we are running. We've got our Youth Voice and our rights projects, detached street-based and mobile projects. We've got NEETs for pre and post 16, our youth homelessness, youth mentors, alongside wellbeing mentors, which are funded by the Families First team and link in there as part of the partnership. Also for our members linking into SEREN for pre and post 16 for those more able and talented learners looking to go to university, and also our rights ambassador worker. That doesn't then include our lunchtime clubs, after school clubs, or holiday projects and schemes such as that we operate alongside that and in our delivery model, I would say. The report goes into some detail in regards to some of our delivery. Specifically, what we looked at this year was our numbers and our total reach. Positive aspect here, talking about pre-COVID, we as a youth service have managed to get back to pre-COVID levels. Last year we hit it and we've managed to maintain that. It's dropped slightly, but we are noticing a trend of more females accessing our youth services. Used to be heavily focused on a male, disproportionately higher. However, it is now we're seeing more females coming through the service and accessing our services. So it's great to see. But we do also have a range of boys projects that are going to come online in the next 12 months in order to try and get that balance back to 50-50 so that it's more accessible. The reach for the youth service this year was 13.7% of young people from the Vale of Glamorgan. So it shows we're getting out there and we're getting seen, which is really positive. A great thing to report to the members really is that we had a very, very positive Estin inspection in March this year. The youth service inspection is the first Estin inspection that's been done for over 18 years. And we were lucky enough to be as part of that alongside the Legis inspection. And for us, we were lucky enough to come away with only one recommendation, which we're working hard on to develop now over the next year, and specifically identify staff training and progress for those learners and increasing on our Welsh language skills across the team, really. We have been busy with the gold quality mark. We currently are waiting for Welsh Government to sign that off and give us the stamp of approval. But we are hoping to achieve this alongside our bronze and silver quality marks that have already been achieved by the Vale Youth Service. And obviously, you know, we've got our fingers crossed that that's going to go really positive for us. The inspection went well, and hoping that we will be then the 10th organisation within Wales to have achieved our bronze, silver and gold. So I'm hoping that within the next couple of months we'll be hearing about that, and we'll ensure then that's shared on our socials and our communication networks as well, so that everybody is aware of it. The number of young people that have been linked into accreditation in the service has got higher. So out of those 14.3% reach, 3% of those have actually achieved an accreditation with us this year. That is a nationally recognised qualification, whether that's an Agoric Cymru entry level or going up as high as a BTEC, which is equivalent to a GCSE. And that for us is an increase on 1.2% on the previous year. And obviously there is a lot of progress for us in the sense of pushing the agenda on informal learning and recognised learning outside of the classroom. So we are really pushing that, I guess, in the sense of the purposes and principles of youth work, and in ensuring those young people have those opportunities to skill build outside a school setting. We've delivered the range of sessions, as I mentioned. The report talks about 380 open access youth clubs. So that's literally every session that's going on in the communities out in the night. Generally, they're a 3-hour provision. So from 6 till 9, for example, on a Tuesday, that's classed as one. So over the past year, we've delivered at least 380 of those. And something I was talking about for accreditation there, we've currently had 39 young people actually going through their bronze and silver Duke of Edinburgh Award. We haven't held one, obviously, with COVID and coming back after COVID. But this year, we actually took them all away for their residential, which was a great experience. I've got to be lucky. I was the on-call at home. So I had a little bit less of an experience of being woken up at 4 o'clock every morning and those early morning wake ups. So well done to Pete and the team for that one. Additional to that, obviously, we've got the holiday programs, as I mentioned. We offer a range of holiday provision when normally there is no access to other services for young people in the Vale. We've engaged with almost 354 young people in those settings over the summer period, half terms, holidays, where we do a range of trips, accredited courses, and we try and link in with sports and plays. So an element that will have been discussed in the past is the leisure centre takeover, where we open up the leisure centre and we get lots of young people involved in lots of youth activities. But obviously, as part of that, we've also got our archery kit, which a lot of our young people love. So we take our free targets along, and we specifically run that kind of activity alongside the leisure centres, then running basketball and football, etc., to keep young people active, healthy, and to promote their well-being, really. We are continuing to run our 4 wellbeing after school clubs. That's in Whitmore, St Cyries, Lantwit and Stanwell. I'm aware that St Cyries has recently moved into a lunchtime club since I produced the report, just because it was more accessibility. Young people were able to access a lunch club, whereas after school they had different clubs on and activities. So we weren't seeing as many young people, and it wasn't really value. So 115 young people have benefited from that activity that we're on offer, and we're also looking to develop other lunchtime provisions now in Cowbridge, Ysgol Bro Morgannwg and St Richard Gwyn, in order to widen the reach and get more young people involved. The service continues to implement the participation policy, obviously looking to to kind of further embed our commitment to rights-based practice in youth work delivery. We've got a range of opportunities from the Vale Youth Council, Penarth Youth Action, the Rights Ambassadors, Her Voice Wales project, and the School Council Network. A good showcasing of this is that they've attended over 72 meetings this year, with a total of 2,040 hours of volunteering given by those young people, which is a huge commitment and a massive well done to those young people who have been recognised through in-house certificates and vouchers for their contribution. Her Voice Wales, some might know as a girls' rights group, project aimed to supporting young people to build their skills and confidence, to become a champion of equality in their own communities and empower them to change perceptions and attitudes towards girls so that girls can live free from gender equality. We were lucky enough that the project actually won the National Award at the Youth Excellence Awards in Llandudno for the quality of their partnership working. And to build upon that, we've also got a group of those learners, 4 of them, will be travelling to New Zealand very shortly as part of an international mobility programme funded through the TIFE programme. And they'll be able to look at good practice and share their experiences in partnership with Plan International. So it's a massive opportunities for those young people. And luckily enough, 2 of our staff also get to go for those 2 weeks over to New Zealand. So it's going to be a great opportunity. There's been lots of work already done with Pembrokeshire, who are leading on the project. And the other 4 young people from Pembrokeshire, they've already done some networking events, questions and queries. They've already had some kind of residentials and trips to do some team bonding. So they're really looking forward to that. But many, they will know that we've got a long-standing partnership with the Urdd Gobaith Cymru, to deliver our Welsh language youth work in the Vale. And alongside that, they lead and feed into our local authority Welsh Education Strategic Plan, the WESP. They've provided a weekly youth worker based at Ysgol Gyfun Bro Morgannwg and provide weekly support for young people. So generally it's around 15 to 20 young people each session. They support gigs at school itself. They offer bilingual sessions, holiday events and bigger trips. And they're also delivering Welsh in English speaking schools for us. So those schools that are struggling and having those opportunities for wider young people to learn the Welsh language, they're going into those schools and offering lunch clubs and sessions where they can just use the Welsh language in that setting to offer something different than just a classroom learning experience. So we're still pushing for that, and a number of holidays and weekend trips and sessions have been booked, and obviously attending the local Gwyl Fac Throw event and the National Eisteddfod. I know that one of the National Eisteddfod is a big one, and obviously for us the Gwyl Fac Throw, which is down at the Barry Island site there, is huge for us each year. The service in partnership with the Vale People's First currently, we've piloted a little programme aimed at engaging young people with additional learning needs aged between 11 to 16. We piloted that last year, and as part of one of the recommendations for our silver quality mark in reaching out and achieving more work and support for those young people with disabilities, we now have a weekly provision that runs for 30 young people. So we've got 2 qualified staff that are attending, plus then a number of staff from Vale People's First then who are supporting those young people with their needs. And additional to that, then those staff are also attending our youth work course and learning how to become qualified youth workers alongside it. And we're currently scoping how we can deliver that also for 18 plus in the Vale, so that we can almost have a consistent provision there for young people with additional learning needs that will follow all the way through. The big aspect I did want to raise is obviously the youth service is currently split 60-40 in the sense of core funding versus grant. The grant increased this year by around 7%. And obviously at the moment, what we are concerned about as a service is that the Welsh Government youth work grant is currently under review, and we're not sure whether there'll be a 5-year review on that strategy. Also, a lot of our funding is now coming from the shared prosperity funding, which puts the project at risk. As many will know, there is the youth work strategy for Wales, the principles and purposes of youth work document, and obviously the extended entitlement. And I would say that it was good to see today from gov.wales that today the Cabinet Secretary for Education has launched their initial consultation on a proposed new statutory framework for youth work, which will be good for us if that comes through and is pushed through in the consultation. That's it for myself. Obviously, I've hit on some of the key points there and open for questions, Chair.
Thanks very much, Rhys. Councillor Hennessy.
Hi, Rhys. Thank you for the report. excellent, as always. I know how hard your team works. I would like you to give my appreciation to all your staff for all the hard work they do. I'm specifically interested big ways, like you know, with Vale People First, with all the excellent work you do with Liz. I think everything you do is absolutely marvellous. And once again, please give your team my appreciation.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Rhys. As we already know, we do have already have a statutory base for youth work in Wales, the only country in the UK to do so. So that's something that should be congratulated, that we do have a framework to hang all our youth work practice on. So that's really good. One of the things I was really interested in was the summer provision, which in terms of those who are aware of the youth work curriculum statement for Wales, I thought was a brilliant piece of work. I know that Councillor Goodjohn was there in his capacity with the Youth Council, but it did give a broad spread of what we do offer as a youth service in the Vale of Glamorgan. It was well attended. Some of the activities were very diverse in terms of creative activities, physical activities, cultural activities, music and creativity, you know, the creative industries, all that stuff. So, you know, it's something to build on, isn't it? And obviously, we always want more funding for the youth service. And, you know, I have a bias. I'm a youth and community worker, so that is my thing. So, you know, there is no magic for money at the moment, is there? We're all, you know, suffering with our finances and our budgets. But obviously, any input that we can have into finding any alternative funding as a scrutiny committee, I'm sure we would be happy to look at that. But, you know, well done. And, you know, the summer activities were great. And it's been a bit of a jump from COVID to now, you know, and there's a lot of emphasis being put on, you know, engagement with young people, because they did suffer, as we all did, with COVID, with, you know, not going out, not engaging, not wanting, you know, to be in the outside world. So that's been a bit of a long journey for the youth workers and the young people. So well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Councillor Asbury. And if you're there, might be a legacy hand otherwise.
Yes, is that better?
Yeah.
Sorry. I've noticed you touched on the fact you've had money from SPF, and that money has virtually dried up now, as far as I know. And one of your recommendations, or the only one perhaps, develop opportunities for Welsh medium and bilingual youth work provision. So are you going to be able to fund that unless you get some extra money in? Because I would assume you would need to employ some Welsh speaking staff to actually push that through.
Yeah, so the only single recommendation from Estyn is around the Welsh language. However, we have already got the long-standing relationship with the IRV, so we already fund the IRV around £50,000 per year to deliver our services bilingually. So the Welsh worker Helef has already attended all our events in the summer. She attends our events during, you know, the evening when we're running youth clubs. There's also a Welsh youth club they run alongside that delivery in the schools. So for us, it's about what is our next steps. I feel that a lot of the current delivery model is based around the WESP and how we're supporting the WESP, whereas effectively what we need to look at is how we deliver youth services and the youth offer to young people bilingually. So there's an element of this needing to change in the future. However, alongside that, that could include us doing targeted recruitment for Welsh speaking staff, alongside putting our staff through courses and training, and just putting that at the top of our priority going forward. You know, the shared prosperity funding is there, and there is two elements to the shared prosperity. So there is an element of pre-16 NEET work that is currently funding, and the additional SPF funding we received this year has been targeted towards the placemaking groups. And so we've started working out in the Cowbridge area alongside doing youth consultation in the schools, and also towards a new mobile youth provision. So the current VPOD that we had has become too expensive to replace and remodel and make it work. So what we're looking to do as part of the SPF funding is actually buy a new, smaller mobile provision, which will be able to go out to every location. It's not as big as the previous one, plus any driver will be able to drive it. We don't have to worry now about having somebody that needs a HGV license to drive that resource out. So it's just about the change of delivery model to make it work for us within the resources we have and with the financial parameters that are set, unfortunately. But I feel that, it's about us looking, effectively at how we can do that together as a service, and with close communication with the team and the heads of service, I think we can do that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, and Councillor Ewan Goodjohn.
Thank you, Chair. And of course, all of my love and support to all of the staff they don't need their work is, and particularly I think that's important to know is how cost effective their work is for the little investment that we put in, the amount of good that all is done. I have two main questions. Firstly, just on the C card scheme, this report includes 19 new assessors have been trained, and 13 staff have refreshed their training in the C card scheme. I just want to check whether those numbers are for the Vale or for Cardiff and the Vale, as this is a shared service in funding with the YMCA Healthy Relationship Service. I know that there have been multiple attempts to get it back off the ground, and there's been difficulty with finding staff considering the amount of resource for this service. So any clarity would be good.
Yeah, so this is specifically Vale staff. So we fund the Cardiff YMCA programme, obviously already operating Cardiff, and we bought in then so that they could deliver across Cardiff and the Vale. So they're specifically for the Vale. So that'll be our youth workers itself being trained and having their refresher training. And alongside that, the current delivery model is looking to increase. So they've currently been trialing schools to try and get in the schools with the nurses to offer that for 14 plus young people age appropriate. And additional to that, then also leisure centres in the Vale. So they're looking to widen where young people can access that scheme. This year, we found it quite challenging as a youth service because our young people aged 14 plus have kind of limited. It is a little bit more towards 11 to 14 is our main age range. So we're finding that the amount of resource we're passing out through our services is limited. It's not that much. So there will be a question as to whether this service continues next year, especially considering that realistically us delivering a condom distribution service from the youth clubs, when effectively it is an area planning board commitment as part of health, is we double funding. And when money is this tight and we have to deliver our core services, there is a question whether we need to maintain that or whether we have to limit what we're able to deliver in the Vale.
No, I think that's a fair question of resources, although the support that this gave young people before the pandemic locally, because of how wide-ranging the scheme was, has to be noted. So any improvement on the current situation, because obviously a lot of it was abandoned over COVID, such as inclusion in leisure centres would be good, because access outside of schools has been, well, I'll be honest, it's almost non-existent at the moment. It's pretty much just the youth clubs. So that would be an improvement and good to see. Secondly, just on the grant funding point. So we're moving from 60 to 67% grant funding. So there would only be a third that's funded out of our core council budget. You've said that you're worried about the review that is happening on a Welsh level. So is this for the 5-year review? Are we going to get a certainty on the next 5 years of funding? And how long is it until we know when the review is over and we know what funding we're going to be getting for the next financial year?
With the launch of consultation today, we're hoping that we'll hear something by the 24th of December, same as every year. But that doesn't give us a lot of time to then plan what will the provision look like in March and April, considering that a lot of staff contracts run up until the 31st of March, and potentially if there are risks, obviously that 3-month period is a risk then. As members have already made aware, share prosperity has already dried up. So, that £100,000+ that's being used this year towards a new mobile provision and delivering a service has to be found in the budget next year, no matter what. Plus then additional, as many will know, pay award last year was only 75%. So we've needed to find that 25% alongside then an increase in pensions. So for us, I think it was around 32% that we had to find last year. So those sort of commitments going forward do put us at risk of what services we can deliver, because as I say in there, is shared prosperity is definitely dried up. So what we will get next year is not guaranteed. Plus then the youth work grant, as I said, hopefully we'll hear by Christmas if we're going to get the same allocation. But as I said, as part of this, there is the new consultation that is only just launched today talks around about a 5-year strategy for now. Hopefully that might give us 5 years of core funding, 5 years worth of funding and give us long-term security, but there's no guarantee of that. We just don't know what that will look like, especially as a lot of that contribution has also gone towards third sector partners, that type of approach. So we do have to be really cautious in our delivery model going ahead.
And just to finish then, so that's an extra 7%. So that is a total of 140,000 that we're hoping Welsh Government will be funding through grant, rather than in total over a few different grants, rather than coming from our core budget. Okay, so that might have to come out of budget if we decide, which I would hope we decide to fund this if and only if the review didn't go favourably and kept funding at the same level. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that, Ewan. And Councillor Marshalsea.
Hi, yeah, I had the pleasure of meeting with Her Voice Wales last week with their staff members and volunteers. So I just want to say huge congratulations to their Youth Excellence Award. They were a phenomenal group of young women, and all of the staff and all of them were so good that we're meeting again because they had so many different opinions and ideas that it was getting dark. So they are such a positive part of the youth service. So thank you. They were helpful to me.
Thank you. Councillor Lynch-Wilson.
Hi, very interesting report. I was very interested in your comments about the VPod. As I'm a councillor for St Athan, we do get it we had it in our community centre car park, and I know it's much loved. So I'm very glad that it's not going completely. I know things have to change and things happen, and it was rather a large vehicle for parking places. I know that you had difficulty going to some places, but I'm very glad to hear that it's not completely going, because it was a big resource that came to our fates, etc. Very big part of where I live. So very pleased to hear it's not going completely.
No, fingers crossed. Just to add, obviously, the VPod will be used up until Christmas. And then just for members' awareness, we're looking then whether it can be repurposed somewhere else. So possibility, for example, such as using up a Pencoitra as an outdoor learning space or something different, so that we don't get rid of it totally. The new smaller vehicle that we will have will be able to be used by all of our team. Everybody will be able to drive it. So much better for us. Plus also it will hit the green strategy in that it's a new electric vehicle and will be powered by batteries as well. So definitely something that we're looking forward to having in the future and being able to utilise. I know obviously in St Athan we've been doing a bit of a detached route and obviously we're still trying to work as much as we can in that area. And obviously once the new vehicle comes across, we'll possibly be using that as well. So it's great.
You're more than welcome in St Athan. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that, Julie. Can't see any other hands up, so thanks for the presentation, Rhys. And I move that we note the report, and having considered the progress made by the youth service in the last 10 months, we note the ongoing developments, achievements and quality of the service, and then we'll receive another update from you in December 25. If I could have a seconder, Councillor Lynch-Wilson, thanks very much. Back to you again, Reece, for the Education Other Than at School and Pupil Engagement Service.
That's great. So thank you, Chair. So yeah, the second report bringing to committee today is the OTAS, so Education of the School and our Pupil Engagement Service. The LA has a legal responsibility under the Education Act 2002 and the Education Skills Measure 2008 to monitor OTAS commissioning the services and also the provision to meet the needs of complex learners. So this is where the parameters of this service lies, and obviously I'll go you through some of the key aspects today. The Pupil Engagement Team annually contract a range of services. This is from bespoke providers for learners accessing the local authority as required. Some of our providers will include the GROW at the Mila Trust Farm, a provision called Smooth Starts Plus, which is an occupational therapist who provide one-to-one and group-based sessions, also then private tutors, online providers such as Academy 21, and the use of, as some may have seen in the past, our use of AV1 robots. All of these interventions and provisions are with an aim to reintegrate students back into mainstream education or within provision or maybe possibly one of our resource bases. The idea there and the instance of this is looking to work and develop that relationship with those young people who are displaced from education and try and get them back into mainstream education, or trying to get them into something more permanent before the need then arises for us to look for specialists or out of county, where unfortunately for us that can be quite costly and push the bill up for us as a local authority. We, as I said there, we use a mixture of reactive alongside preventative measures for the young people identified in the Vale. We do use early identification via exclusions monitoring. So as Amanda was touching on earlier, whenever exclusions monitoring is mentioned, attendance monitoring, the use of social, emotional and mental health panel, which is called SEMP, and the use of reduced timetables via the portal, and then any additional meetings with in-house partners such as the ALN team or our YGES colleagues. We use all of those kind of formats and parameters in order to identify young people at risk, and identify where provision isn't suitable or where we need to kind of look at early interventional support and getting those learners back into mainstream. Before then, there's a wider disengagement. And as Amanda touched on earlier, once you do get those learners with persistent absenteeism, it just then perpetuates the issue, and obviously those range of interventions needed to support those learners can be quite far-reaching. During last year, the Pupil Engagement Team managed to secure additional funding. However, this was specifically in relation to the Pencoitre cluster based on their Estin report and especially as members have discussed on today in relation to the attendance being so low. We were really concerned with the range of interventions and support in place. As Amanda touched on from attendance and other colleagues, they put in a range of additional support and widened the reach, whilst we then also looked as a Pupil Engagement Service to put in projects that potentially would support those learners. So partnerships with Cardiff City Foundation, the KICS programme, Empire Fighting Chance, which is a boxing charity over in Bristol. Many of you will know Lee Selby and his contributions in the Vale. Also projects such as therapeutic mentoring aimed at engaging with families and the parents, and also Inspired Learners, a local provision that's based at the top of Hulton Road, in order to try and engage learners and get them back into education as quick as we could. On what is, I would say, is a positive note, our learners' numbers within the Vale for EOTAS, when we do our census each year, this year it actually dropped by 1. So the last 2 years we've had a consistency of 45 learners. This year on our return in January, we actually reported 44 to Welsh Government. So that's a great number for us as a local authority. I know there was a significant drop in 2021, and as I made clear before, that's in relation to us no longer having a pupil referral unit in the Vale. We've now only got resource bases attached to our schools, therefore we do not have a PRU number, and those numbers then came off this list of those monitored and recorded as EOTAS. There is a chart within the report that looks at the Welsh average. The Vale of Glamorgan has dropped below the Welsh average whilst remaining static at 1.9% this year, whilst the Welsh average has actually increased by 0.2% within every 1,000 pupils. So it's actually showing how good our numbers are across the Vale, especially when the Welsh average is rising across Wales. So there's the link there actually to the gov.wales site, so people can look at the figures in comparison to other local authorities if they do wish. The 44 learners that we reported on this year, there is a breakdown of that one, which is specific then to 6 primary learners, which are reception to year 6, 30 secondary, which will raise them from year 7 to year 11, and then there's 8 other learners then, which will also be in year 12, 13 or 14, classes post 16, and in higher education that we're supporting as part of their IDP. So it is slightly different these years because of the IDP process and our commitment to support those learners into post 16 provision, and also a number of these learners, these 8 post 16 learners, are quite often the ones that will be in, for example, Headlands or one of those specialist schools where they offer a 6th form, and quite often they'll run up until year 14. So it just extends that amount of provision that we're able to offer those learners. We've supported a range of staff with additional support. So as part of 14 to 19 pathway, we are supporting schools to look at interim arrangements, their own curriculum offer, and what else they could be doing. So that may be with MPTC in Cardiff. It could be with the junior apprenticeship programme with Cardiff and Vale College. It could be Grow themselves. They may have bought in spaces at Grow at the Media Trust Farm. But as part of the package, we're also looking to widen the scope of work experience. We're conscious that a number of schools have got learners that are better hands-on, more vocational learning, maybe mechanics, construction, those types of programs. So what we're looking to do is actually support schools in gaining their IELTS certificate. This way, they've got a key member of staff within those schools who can go out into the communities and actually build these relationships with local businesses, places of that they can have links to, and effectively some of these learners could then be doing 2 days work experience in a local garage or sticking local with businesses, etc., which in the future then when they do leave school could be offering a job at the weekends or a job long term, but also it's that hands-on skills training that they need. And the best part about all of the work experience is it doesn't cost anything. For a school, a lot of the training providers, vocational and Cardiff, for example, a lot of those will be on average £100 per day per learner, and that doesn't include transport. So, for those schools that are in deficit budgets, as being mentioned this evening, the opportunity then to go to work experience placements and have a couple of days out is a really cost-effective way of supporting those learners, and it gives them the best curriculum they need, really, which does meet their need and fits what their interests are for longer term. We're currently developing our reach. A couple of years ago, we supported the Children's Commissioner with provision in hospitals for those learners that unfortunately had to spend 16 days or more within a hospital setting, some which may have lifelong conditions. And unfortunately for us, obviously after day 16, we are responsible to deliver that education in line with the Act. So we've developed our relationship with Galady, which is through health. And as part of that partnership, then we've got a member of staff that sits on the board to discuss any young people who are referred into that team. Plus, then we've also met up with all the hospitals locally who can be providing this provision. And what we do as a local authority then is monitor all kids that are out in hospital tuition for more than 16 days. And then we find private tutors. We look at the use of AV1 bots or potentially online tuition to ensure those learners, whilst in hospital and whilst they can and whilst they're fit to, are able to then access their 25 hours of education per week in line with the statutory guidance. So we are developing that relationship, and I would say that's going really well. As you can imagine, some learners are probably quite surprised when they're thinking they got 6 weeks off school because they've broken their leg, and then we turn up with a robot and they're linking in with their school friends in school and able to access the curriculum. They don't miss out. elements that Amanda was touching on, where kids can actually get a bit anxious because they don't know where they're at, they don't know where their friends are at. The use of the AV1 bot is really good because it sits in the classroom. The kids can actually take that out at break time, and they can actually be chatting with their friends alongside getting their education. So it's a great tool to re-engage learners into education. Amanda touched on this really, but obviously our commitment from day 16 is for those learners who are permanently excluded, following the pupil disciplinary committee. So from day 16 out, the local authority are responsible for providing a full-time education package that meets those needs of those learners. Within the OTAS team and pupil engagement team, which I manage, we've seen a massive rise over this past year. So as Amanda touched on, normally we would see between 3 to 4. Last year alone, we saw 12 secondary learners that were permanently excluded from education settings. So as a consequence of that, our team then go straight in, offer a full-time package of support, whilst learners then are obviously able to apply for a second mainstream school, or alternatively, they're progressing through the IDP process in order to find more specialist, longer term settings. But as you can imagine, each one of those learners are coming, I think Helen touched on this earlier, really, in a sense of each one of those will come with their different set of circumstances. So whether that's family background, whether that's in care, whether they're a young carer, issues not having school uniform, issues on having free school meals, the complexities can range all the way across, and then, when you do find a second school for this young person, it could then be the issue of transport, a second uniform, which parents can't afford and contribute to. So we work with each case to ensure that learner gets back into a mainstream school as quick as possible. And we support them on that journey from day one all the way to the end. So it's a great sense of feeling, when those young people do access back into mainstream school and they finish with us. But during those, what could be anything from 2 to 6 months is a really difficult and busy time for us. As I touched on earlier, really, that rise in hospital tuition and medical needs and those facing EBSA, the emotionally based school avoidance, has risen. So we have actually developed a relationship with our EP service, our Ed Sykes, and we've actually managed to fund an additional student EP this year to actually sit in our team. So the idea is that some of these learners that are permanently excluded, we can actually identify their need immediately, rather than taking time and schools then having that burden of taking a young person, not actually understanding what those needs are. We're aiming to do as much preventative work as we can direct with that learner before they go back in, so that we can ensure we're meeting need and support them back in, and that's sustainable then long term, rather than us worrying about the possibility of a second permanent exclusion and then what would come next for that young person. So it's from our service, it's whatever we can do to ensure that learner is supported as best as possible. As I touched on earlier, the numbers of pupils classed as EOTAS remain stable. However, those numbers for preventative or reactive provision are increasing, especially for those that are permanently excluded from day 16. Our current local authority interim provision is currently full. So that is all our resource bases, whether that's for anxious learners, those learners with ASC or additional learning needs, etc. All of our bases are currently full. So at the moment, any young people that are currently identified or permanently excluded or needing that specialist, unfortunately, will end up having to look at out of county or receiving something very, very bespoke in order to meet their needs, which unfortunately for us will come under education over that school to develop a 25-hour package. And for the local authority, where obviously we're unable to offer those preventative measures, this can become quite costly for us as a service. The funding allocation for this year has already been fully spent. As I've touched on there, we've already arranged a range of services and interventions and provision. So the local authority is currently spent on pupil engagement budget. My concern, as I've highlighted there, is obviously if there's more young people identified at risk now going forward, and young people needing specialists, the difficulty here is that whilst all our resources bases are full, our service will then have to pick up interim arrangements until we find them in out of county. So the OTAS numbers could actually rise over this year, going forward really into next year. And that's it for me, Chair, if there's any questions from panel.
That's great. Thank you, Reese. Councillor Emma Goodjohn.
Thanks, Reese. That is absolutely brilliant and very impressive. And I'd just like to say well done to you and the team. It just shows brilliant thinking out of the box and being able to provide such a massive range of support and provision for our young people. And it's it's amazing really what you're able to provide. We're wondering, I'm just wondering if you've got any kind of figures on how long it takes if people are able to go back into mainstream education, and how long roughly it can take. I understand not everyone may be able to do that, but it would be quite interesting to know some figures. And also very interested in the bots, the robots, the AV1 robots. We've never heard of them before, so it'd be quite interesting to know a little bit more. Thank you.
Yeah. So the difficulty for us is from day 16 from PDC when that permanent exclusion is upheld, we will intervene then and put in the interim provision. What I would say is Amanda Geddes and her team of inclusion then go to work. So obviously during that period there's an appeals process, and in addition then there'll be regular meetings through inclusion with the parents looking at what's the next step. So is there IDP or is there needs that cannot be met and it has to go to panel, or additional then is there have no needs been identified and can they go straight into the second mainstream school? So from day 17, really, the idea is that the inclusion team will support that learner then to identify another school that parents and child are happy with. Then the discussions start with that school as to getting that young person in. As I said, then there's the complexities of travel, transport. At the moment, a lot of our year groups in years 8 to 10 are currently full across the board. So the difficulty for us is if a young person is excluded from Pencoitre, for example, the closest space could be Lantwit. So it's then how do you get them there, let alone then what school uniform they can get, obviously with the cost of living, etc. Some parents are finding that challenging. But I have got cases where that can take up to 6 to 9 months to get into another school or potentially longer term education as well. So it does vary case by case. But I have had cases where there's almost, literally, 2 terms and then we're looking at where's next, because we are supposed to be an interim arrangement. So, normally our provision only lasts 2 terms, and then realistically, we should be going on to the next steps then, or next school or mainstream school or whichever may follow. So I hope that touches on that point. Obviously, the AV1 bots, I've got some information, some leaflets and stuff, and I'll ensure they're shared with the group as well so that everyone can see what the AV1 bots are. I know they've been on national press as well, because a lot of local authorities have bought these AV1 robots in, but I'll definitely get some information out so all panel members can see the robot and how we use them to kind of, keep learners engaged in education.
Thank you, Reese. Really appreciated.
Thank you. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Reese. I'm just interested in the link between, we talked about the 5 to 6% deficit that we have in school attendance. So were we pulling into OTAS from that 5 to 6%, or is it completely separate? And that's the first bit, Reese. The second bit is, I'm interested in the pressures on the staff in terms of, you have additional learners that are coming in, additional young people that are coming in with more complex needs. How is that affecting staffing? Okay, so the first one, obviously preventative measures within the schools. So the only provision we've actually put in preventative at the moment would be Cardiff City Football Club, which we've put into Pencoitre this year and Lantwit based on the complexities that Amanda mentioned earlier. From that 5 to 6%, if they do come to SENT panel, we would maybe approve, they could maybe have a grow space if the school can't afford it, or we'd look at other reintegration that could support that learner getting back into education sooner. What I would say is that the amount of spaces that I've got are very limited. So
there wouldn't be a lot of that 5 to 6%, if I'm honest. The only ones that would come up is those that potentially are based around emotionally based school avoidance or EBSA. In that instance, it could be that I support them with the student EP. So whether we're looking more at the needs of those young learners, because the ALNCO within those schools can't go out and do a home visit and see them. So what we would do then is put on some wellbeing activities at the YMCA. They would meet our tutor, but alongside that, the student EP would be there then to actually assess the needs and identify what's the best next step, because quite often there is that struggle then of where do we go and what's best, or how can we reintegrate? And for some of those, it could be that that's actually what they need, is to identify what those longer term needs are and say, actually, there's an anxiety issue here, or there's this issue here, or, and I think I would say for us, we are lucky in a sense. We do have 2 staff in the team. That is it. That is, there's myself, Shelley, and Samira, who's very new. Between the 3 of us, we manage this service. So, for us, it's busy, but we keep her active. We keep it going. We ensure the learners have the provision that best suits their need. What I would say is that we tend to only deliver OTAS packages and support. Our model isn't to support with needs or identification of needs. That is the EP's job, and that is the ALN service team. So, they're able to come to our services that we're delivering to access that, but it's not our job to assess need or identify the out provision that's best suited to meet that need of that learner. So for us, we are very target driven at providing that 25 hours of education, and if I'm honest, that's where the creativity comes in. How can we add well-being? How can we add work experience? How can we add a day at Grow? How can we put a little bit of equine therapy or other support in to best suit that learner whilst we wait for the next step? So it's very much being creative as a team and supporting that day to day. Obviously, the difficulty comes where we also face young persons who won't access our services that we offer. So that's luckily enough. We've got the tutor then at the YMCA who can go and do house visits. So they go and do sightings, they go and do wellbeing check-ins. So the best thing there, I guess, is that we're saving the duplication of work. So instead of Amanda and the inclusion team going out, we're doing that ourselves as a service. So we're trying to be as effective as we can and, efficient as we can in delivering that service.
Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. I can't see any other hands up. So having considered the developments made by the People Engagement Service, I move that we note the report and receive another further progress update in due course. Thanks to Emma Gudjon for seconding. Thank you, Reese.
Thank you.
Cheers. So we move on to agenda item 7, the Youth Engagement and Progression Update. So Peter Williams.
Thank you, Chair. So just wanted to update the members of the committee on the progress in relation to the Youth Engagement Progression Framework, or the framework, since January 24, when our last update was passed on. So the framework continues to be Welsh Government led, is in place, is reported on within the local authority and to Welsh Government. We've got a couple of internal methods we use for that, as well as our sort of regular 6-month and 12-month reporting to Welsh Government. It also forms part of the national milestones set out by Welsh Government within the wider work of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. And following the review in 2021-2022 of the framework, it's now brought in the inclusion of the Welsh Government Homelessness Strategy that is part of their work towards ending homelessness in Wales. So this report outlines some of the data linked that we've had as part of the Pupil Destination Survey. Our key areas for this are from October 2023, which looks at the year 11, 12 and 13 leavers. Unfortunately, because of the way the data set works, the data cut-off point is October 2023, but we don't receive the finalised data from Welsh Government until early May in 2024, which is why the data is so late coming to scrutiny for feedback. But we look at that in terms of who's not in education, employment or training, and that's passed on as part of the Careers Wales feedback report each year. In October 2023, the Vale had a reduction in the number of NEET young people leaving year 11. That followed a spike from 2022, and we're now currently ranked 2nd in Wales, which is very, very positive. There has been an increase, though, in both years 12 and 13 for the Vale. So the year 12 increase is not in line with the Welsh Government increase, the Welsh average increase across Wales. This is due to a higher number than normal of local authorities reporting 0 neat young people in year 12. There's always a couple of authorities that report 0, but this year's data had a higher number than normal. Within the Vale, we reported an increase of 2 young people in 2020. An increase from 2 young people in 2022 up to 5 young people in 2023. So it's only an increase of 3 young people within the Vale of Glamorgan. It does show within that, though, the impact a small number of young people can have on these figures and the impact that has in terms of our percentage rating within Wales and our ranking. In terms of our year 13 figure, the increase we had locally is comparable to the average across Wales, which is reassuring to know. However, the 2023 cohort did evidence a much higher than previous years in terms of numbers of young people leaving year 13 with barriers to engagement. And that was the reason they were prevented from going into further positive destinations, either from university, employment, or further training. Due to the way we sort of respond to these data trends, we're now looking at some of the things we can input in place this academic year. So in terms of the year 13 and year 12 support, we want to try and identify some of the barriers at an earlier stage. We don't want to leave it to a point where we are reacting to that much further down the line following the destination survey. What we're looking to do this year is to have support from our Strive team to go into sixth forms over the next academic year and to sort of offer a drop-in service to young people, either to look at barriers that they might be encountering or to look at their options for sort of end of year 12 or end of year 13. We're also trying to do more proactive work in terms of tackling those who are looking to drop out from sixth form. There are always a few each year, but we're trying to take those more proactive steps so they are out of provision for as short a time as possible. The homelessness prevention agenda within the framework aligns now with the Vales work stream. So the Strive project was set up back in January 2023 following the ESF closures of I2A and I2W. And that now provides a combined needs and homelessness prevention team delivery model to young people. Our delivery model has been highlighted and identified as an example of good practice at both Welsh Government level, and we presented a joint feedback on how this work and how this delivery model works in practice to a joint needs and homelessness coordinators meeting earlier this year. A lot of authorities keep their needs and homelessness prevention work separate, and there can be elements of duplication of service across that. So using our examples of being able to show that collaboration work was really positive, and there was some really some strong views in terms of how this could be a popular model going forward across Wales. As Rhys mentioned in the youth service update just now, we also had our EST inspection earlier this year, and the collaborative approach model that we used for Strive was highlighted through a cameo in the local authority EST inspection report. So again, that's really positive to show and highlight the strength of that model and how we can sort of make best use of the funding we have available to make sure the service we offer and shared expertise best meets those needs of young people in the Vale. In terms of partnership working within the Vale delivery, we make sure that's highlighted at every possible opportunity, and it was reflected on within our report as well from Estin. We've been praised for having good internal and external partners when we're targeting specific groups of young people. So an example of that is within a roadshow we ran earlier this year, around February time. Within 2 secondary schools, we took our mobile provision VPod up to Cowbridge Comprehensive and Pencoed High School to look at those 2 opportunities, as well as supporting and promoting our Post-16 Choices website. There were partners there from Youth Service staff, Careers Wales, Cardiff College and Clymai. From within that, we saw roughly 160 young people across the 2 events, which was really positive. And as a result of those, some of those young people then progressed on to attend open evenings at the college later in that week. For this year, we're looking to do an event planned in February again, but it's during Apprenticeship Week, which is around mid-February. We're looking to provide opportunities for year 11, 12 and 13 learners to come to the memo, to look at opportunities, explore those opportunities around alternatives, and not looking just at sixth forms or college, but looking at sort of apprenticeships and degree apprenticeship routes, as well as that sort of work-based learning route as well. We're using that during the daytime, and then we're also looking to do a sort of a wider community engagement event later on that day as well, for families to come along to, and for those who are sort of out of school age and looking up to sort of the 25 plus age group as well. Further promotional for that will come out later on this term. It just shows some of the diverse routes we try and use to try and engage young people at the earliest opportunity, to make sure they've got enough opportunity to make those informed choices on their futures. C4W Plus and CAL Plus continue to offer our employability support across the Vale. There was significant changes to the funding that C4W Plus receives this financial year. And also in reflection to that, they also changed the eligibility criteria from Welsh Government for this. CAL Plus, which is funded from Shared Prosperity Fund, has been able to support this and take on further referrals for that cohort from 16 to 19, which does bridge the gap in between. However, as I mentioned later on as well, there are some significant risks with that as well. As Rhys mentioned in the youth service update, the grant reflection of how much we're funded from grant is increasing. Our current percentage for the NEET and homelessness prevention team is 83% from external grants, which is a significant amount. This is split across the Shared Prosperity funding, which is due to end in March 25, and also the Welsh Government Youth Support Grant, which we said is up for review this year as well. Once this is done, we will look at what we can deliver going forwards, but obviously with such a high percentage going from external grant, there is a concern going forward about what this offer of support is going forward from the Vale Glamorgan. There were two key recommendations from this report, and one of them would be to look at moving the report for next year to July 2025. With this, that moves the annual feedback to a more pertinent time following that release of the destination data in around April, May time, which gives enough time to go through the process to be able to submit. That's about a summary of the report, but if there's any questions, more than happy to take. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Peter. Very comprehensive. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Peter. You mentioned CALP Plus. I'm interested to see, I'm not sure if I missed that bit, how many young people are accessing CALP Plus? Do we know that?
I do, if you give me 2 seconds, just have a check on the report. It's not part of the delivery model we have within the youth service. It is through a separate team within the Directorate of Health, Learning and Skills, but it's delivered by a separate team. So CALP Plus, no, I haven't got the figure in there for the CALP Plus ones. Well, I can find that and get back to you on that one.
All right, brilliant. Thanks very much.
But I do know alongside that, they did do a quick start position again, which had 11 vacancies from that within the council. And from that, then all 11 completed their placements, which was 6-month pay placements, and 9 of them secured fixed term roles within the council or with other agencies. So the transition from the provision from that into full-time work was very positive from that.
Great, thank you for that. Councillor Goodjohn.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Peter. And again, I want to say a massive thank you to you and the team. And from a parent in my ward as well, whose 2 children have actually managed to get work placements through you and CALP Plus. So that is just wonderful. And it was so nice to hear how thankful and positive stories going on there. And thank you from me because of the range, again, the range of engagement that you do for all types of backgrounds is amazing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Emma. I can't see any other hands up. So I move that, as you mentioned, Peter, having considered progress over the last 8 months, we'll note the report and then receive a further progress update report that's kind of better lined up with the cycle in July 2025. So thanks, Councillor Emma-Goodron, for the hand up there. And thank you, Peter, for the presentation.
Great, thank you.
Cheers. Moving on to agenda item 8, the Governor Training Report for the 23-24 academic year. Lisa. We can't. Yeah, you popped up then, but we couldn't see or hear you.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, yeah. And see you.
Oh, isn't technology wonderful? Thank you, Chair. Obviously you'll have all seen the report, so I won't go through too much of the detail, other than the headline figures and also some of the reflections we've been making during this last year in terms of the process. So there are approximately 850 governors at any one time managing 55 schools within the Vale. Governors play a key role in school improvement and in other areas. And in previous years, attendance at governor training has remained positive, and it's increasing from around about 670 to 756 governors attending training in the last 4 academic years. So the number of courses and the range of courses has also increased during that period, from 51 to 89 last academic year. The number of post-training evaluations we're receiving is, however, dwindling, and this has been a bit of a cause for some concern. Although the ones we do receive, over 90% of them respond that training is either good or very good. Although the preference expressed by governors is that they prefer online learning rather than in-person learning, this does make gathering evaluation responses more difficult. You know, in past times, the trainers would almost prevent people from leaving until they completed the documentation. Now it follows up with emails, and sometimes that can prevent difficulties in getting those evaluation responses. So reflecting on this, measures will be taken this year to increase governor engagement with evaluations specifically, as this feedback is really important in order to ensure training remains relevant and useful, and to also widen the types of training that there are on offer. An example of this relates to school budgets, which are clearly challenging for many schools at the moment. And there have been examples mentioned this evening of other training where there is huge benefit. So given the significant financial challenges in particular, we need to be more flexible in targeting future training provision to upskill governors to enable them to both challenge and support our schools. So this could almost be on a school by school basis, delivering additional training to the normal finance training to finance committee governors at the schools to make it more accessible and specific to their own school situation. We'll also be looking at using data to identify any correlation between a lack of engagement with training by the governors at schools where there are concerns identified. An initial review of this for the data for 23-24 academic year has identified that there are some schools where there may be the case, and we will be working with those to address the situation in the form of targeted training, and that's something we're looking into currently. It's particularly relevant to note, and was mentioned earlier today, that Estin are increasingly looking at the schools' best use of their financial resources during the inspection process now, and when considering their judgments, this is relevant. So governors really do need to make sure they're prepared. And I've mentioned finance as an example. However, this will be extended to all courses, for example, safeguarding, attendance, as was mentioned earlier, human resources, etc., with the specific aim of making governor training more targeted and effective to achieve the best outcomes for schools. So, sort of in summary, training is increasing. There is regular engagement. Numbers are going up every year, and when evaluations are received, they're extremely positive. However, there is work to do to ensure that we are really understanding what the training needs of our governors are, and that's something we will be working on this year. So that's a brief summary of the report, but I'd be happy to take any questions.
That's great. Thank you for that, Lisa. I can't see any hands, so I'll kick us off. So points 210 to 217 in the report seem to me to be quite common sense, and I fully support them. For example, the finance training for finance committee governors, specific training to make it more accessible to governors and specific to their own school budget situations, I think is a good idea. Will these things in 210 to 270 definitely be implemented this academic year? And if so, what are the timescales on that? Trevor.
Should I take that one? Short answer is yes. We've already started work with a number of governors who sit on our budget forum, for example, and some of the individual schools where we're having discussions around their budgets. So yeah, at the moment, the traditional sort of finance training is a lot in relation to how the funding formula works and some of the mechanisms behind the scenes. I think what would be really helpful for governors, one, is to understand their own school's budgets from a different perspective. So it's great knowing how the formula works, but in terms of the specific challenges for your school, what does that look like in practice? But also neighboring schools within your cluster and outside of the cluster elsewhere in the Vale, there are things that we can learn and different ways of doing things, at different costs. So in order to help governors be that critical friend and to understand what else is going on outside of their schools, that's kind of the tack that we're looking to do. And the feedback we've had is that would be much appreciated. The other thing we're trying to do, as Lisa mentioned, is maybe piggyback onto existing meetings that governors are having. It's really good to see the feedback from staff who are attending the training, but I'm equally interested in the staff who aren't able to make those training sessions because things are changing so quickly. So if we can be more agile in the way that we link up with some of these governors to give the training, I think that would be helpful as well.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that, Trevor. Councillor Asbury.
Hi. As a governor, one thing that has confused me is a safeguarding course, whereas perhaps I've been on it as a councillor, and maybe a Vale councillor, as a community councillor, and have to go on it as a governor. And I just think I don't want to go on the same course more than once in a specific space of time. So I'm just wondering if there's any system that is out there that once you've done a safeguarding course, then you don't have to do it again in another capacity. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and that's something that I can explore with colleagues. I suspect the reasoning behind it is various categories of staff and volunteers and members all have to complete it for statutory reasons, and it's recorded in a different way. So, and also, for example, I know from my work that there are different levels of safeguarding training. So, what the training that occurs in a school, for example, won't be the same as I would have to do as a senior officer, and won't be the same as, say, a member of my finance team would have to do, for example. So, if it's exactly the same training course, that's something I can explore. But I suspect there are different categories, and because safeguarding is statutory, sometimes I guess that may mean that some people have to do it more than once, but it should only be within a calendar year.
Can I email you on this? Because I also want to know about DBS in a similar...
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Drop me a line with the details and I'll investigate that for you with colleagues.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Payne.
Thank you. Can I second that about the safeguarding? Because if we are doing a minimum standard of safeguarding within the authority in a work capacity or as a councillor, there should be some way of recording it rather than duplication, because we're sometimes doing it twice or three times.
Absolutely,
so
yeah. If you...
I kind of second that. I'd second that. There's obviously going to be a minimum standard, but why are we doing it three times sometimes is my, And the other part of it is, in terms of accessibility for me, is the online training seems to work better. If you're looking at 850 governors across an authority, the online thing is making it more accessible. That was one of the positives that was noted in the last report, and that is still continuing, I assume. The online.
Yes, it still is. It's in this report also. Yeah, it is actually outlined in this report. It is positive. Governors do prefer online learning. The impact of that, the unintended consequences are that we are not necessarily actually seeing the evaluations in, because people are just clicking off at the end of the meeting and they're not filling in the evaluations before they leave the classroom as they would have done historically.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Helen. So I can't see any more hands up. So in that instance, I move that we'll note the report and receive an update again, particularly on 210 to 217 in the next academic year. Councillor Hennessy, thank you very much for seconding. Conscious that time is pressing on and we've still got a couple of agenda items left, so I'll push on. Item 9, the first and second quarter recommendation tracking 24-25, an updated committee forward work programme schedule. So I'm taking on this one. So as an explainer, the report advises of progress in relation to the committee's historical recommendations and provides an updated forward work programme for the rest of the council year into 2025. There's just a few things to highlight that we've done in the past. So the Pencoitra school visit on the 21st of June, which was a historical recommendation, which was good for those who were able to attend. Cabinet noted our comments made in relation to the proposed social, emotional, mental health and wellbeing strategy and the development of the new corporate plan, and our comments in relation to the library's annual report around the Q4 performance monitoring report. In terms of the forward work programme then, the 2 youth service reports were slipped to this meeting because of a large agenda for the September meeting. And then we brought one forward, the summary of Eston inspections, to this meeting instead of next month. So I'll go to comments now. I can see Councillor Marshalsea with your hand up.
Hi there. I know we've previously asked about adding a visit to Ysgol to the programme. Is that possible to add to that, Chair?
It is, absolutely. We will be doing that, Naomi, obviously working with Democratic to get it nailed down, but that is certainly going to happen.
Great, thank you.
No worries. Councillor Payne.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to second Councillor Marshalsea's visit to Ysgol Chair.
No worries. It's all in hand and it won't be done.
Yeah, just to show the committee, it is on my list and I'm working to a date in the end of November. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely. Thank you, Gareth. Great. So if there's nothing else, so I move that the status of the actions listed in Appendices A to C in the report be agreed, and that the updated forward work programme schedule at Appendix D be approved and uploaded to the website. Councillor Emma Goodjohn, thank you very much. That's great. And then finally, item 10, urgent item. So given the ISG's recent collapse and the haunting of building at Ysgol and Llynderw, I requested an urgent report from Trevor and the team, which they've kindly provided. So it's over to Trevor to present the report on that.
Howdy. Yeah, so this report is just going to hopefully give members a bit of clarity in terms of the steps that we've taken as a local authority in relation to ISG entering into administration, and obviously the impact for Ysgol and Llynderw, previously affectionately known as YYD2, which is a satellite extension of our Ysgol and Llynderw Special School. The report in the background just gives you a summary to date, basically, of how we got to where we are today. So the background, when the consultation was done or authorized in 2020, it was then done in 2021. We do a multi-stage appointment process with our tenders with our construction company. So 1.3 talks about the stage 1, which we did with ISG. This looks at the design and procurement services. And then we go on to a second stage tender for the actual build program. ISG was appointed through what's called SUSCAP, Southeast and Mid Wales, what does CAP stand for? Collaborative Construction Framework, I think it is, which is part of a national framework for construction firms for the public sector. So they do schools and hospitals and those sorts of things. Part of being able to be a contractor on the SUSCAP framework involves a lot of due diligence, financial validation, eligibility requirements, and all that kind of thing. So there's just reference to that having been done to give some assurance in terms of the due diligence that was done in the initial stages. The background then talks about some of the delays we had in the program. Section 1.8 has a typo that should say the 22nd of August 2023 instead of 2024, and that's when the stage 2 tender process happened. So that looks at what is the full cost of the program then to start to do the build and then to go into that phase. Folks were on site on the 8th of April 2024, and then on the 20th of September, we had formal notification that ISG was going to enter into administration. There's some details there. 1.10 just says the fact that the company entered administration, it was unforeseen and wasn't able to be predicted, and just again to reassure around the due diligence checks that were done previously. 1.11 talks about the current state of the site. So if you drive by, you'll see that most of the steel framework is up. A lot of scaffolding is still there. A lot of the really difficult and challenging groundworks are all done. So the slabs have been laid, topsoil has been screened, drainage has been done, that kind of stuff. So that's the current state of the site at the moment. Under key issues for consideration, what I've tried to do is just give you a breakdown in terms of the timeline. So I can't comment on ISG's status or what led to it, but I can tell you how we reacted and how we put some planning into place. So there's some background there. In August, we were informed by the SUSCAP framework that ISG had been suspended from the framework. So what that meant was any existing build programs using ISG could continue, but any new tenders couldn't. The reason for that is, as I understand it, they had a change of investor. And with that, as a significant change to the company, they then have to go through and provide some additional paperwork to SUSCAP in order to go back on the framework. And they get about 3 weeks to do that. Again, knowing this information, we're looking at a couple of other school programs. So folks will be aware of Sir Richard Gwyn High School. Because of the situation with ISG, we informed them that we wouldn't be able to consider them for that project. So again, when we do look at our projects, we do a risk evaluation, and that's a level of risk we weren't comfortable with. During the first couple of weeks after ISG was suspended from SUSCAP, we worked really closely with them, again, just trying to understand what that meant in progress and in reality. And what they let us know was, as I said, any existing projects were business as usual, and it's only impacting new contracts through the framework. On the 16th of September, colleagues and I became aware of some of the other challenges that ISG were facing, not specifically in relation to just the framework, but potentially some other challenges the company was facing. And it didn't feel to us as if it was in a good position. What we did at that point, we took the decision that we need to have a plan B and a plan C, D, and E, if I'm being honest with you. But plan B is the worst case scenario. So if things are going to go down a bad route and the company were to enter into administration, what are we going to do about it? So in the background, we started preparing these plans. It's not unusual to do these plans within learning and skills, obviously, because the stakes are always so high. During that week then of the 16th, we did a lot of work speaking with colleagues in legal services, folks in ARDL, our procurement service, and some of the other contractors who had tendered for that piece of work initially. So some of the advice that we had is we had an option to retender, or we could re-award that tender to other applicants when it had gone out earlier. So we started having some conversations with some of those parties. The afternoon of the 19th of September, we had word that subcontractors who were working on site were going to down tools, basically, and walk off site, and that it could go either way, basically. That evening, Ironically, during Learning and Culture Scrutiny Committee at 7 p.m., it became clear that ISG was entering into administration. We didn't have a formal notification, but it was all over media. That evening, we put our plan into place, basically. By early morning on the 20th, a lot of the equipment officers attended site and a lot of the equipment had been removed already. And security was put into place. That afternoon, we had formal notification that they were going into administration. During the week of the 23rd, so the following Monday, we've had a number of meetings on sites with potential contractors to look at the state of the build. So because obviously the building was left partly done, there's a piece of work to assess how far they got, how far they need to go forward, and what surveys and stuff might need to take place. That week, we've also written to ISG. So within our contracts that we put forward with them, there are various clauses to protect us as a council and in terms of how we part with our money, obviously. So we served notice that we basically intended to pay less, which is a legal term, which meant that we weren't going to be paying ISG anything any further. When we do payments, it's blocked up into little chunks. So they'll do a piece of work, it'll be assessed, and then we'll pay, and so on and so forth. So those are, again, some of the controls that we put into place. The 214 there talks about the SUSCAP framework. So this program was tendered under SUSCAP 3, and then that framework will be redone and relaunched in November as SUSCAP 4. So we are currently working behind the scenes at pace, because if we are able to appoint a new contractor under the existing SUSCAP 3 framework, it actually means we'll be able to get folks on site much quicker. So that is our intention at the moment. If we roll over into the SUSCAP 4 framework, then everything has to be reassessed, and that can introduce additional delay somewhere in the region of 4 months. So I want to avoid that as much as possible. 215, again, this is the statement we released on the 20th of September. We are very much committed to delivering the scheme as quickly as possible. We have a lot of pressures in our ALN space and in our special school space. So we need to get that up and running. So that is going to continue. The only other things I'll draw your attention to at the bottom of the report, I've made reference to some of the financial implications. So we're only 2 weeks in. We haven't tendered or appointed anyone new yet, but what we have had is a conversation with Welsh Government, which is if there are increases to the cost of the programme, for example, who pays what and how does that work? So what they have said is if there are any changes to the costs, that we submit what's called a variation request to Welsh Government, and then if approved, they fund us back on the intervention rate. So the way it works for this programme is 75% of the value of the project is funded by Welsh Government and 25% is funded by the council. So whatever that variation may or may not be, but if there is one, then 75% would be covered by Welsh Government and 25% by us, as it stands at the moment. Under employment, so we don't directly employ anyone for ISG, but it's worth noting that there is a significant impact on the local workforce through our 21st century schools, or now called Sustainable Communities for Learning. We do use a lot of the local postcode for subcontractors. It's part of the tenders that we build into it. So it's just to draw attention to the fact that there will be companies locally, not just within Southeast Mid Wales, but locally within our own postcode that will be struggling for this. And we need to be sympathetic and work with them as best that we can. That's critical. That's it from me.
Thank you for that, Trevor. Councillor Hennessy.
Hi, Trevor. Thank you very much for this report. I do appreciate it. Currently, ISG is in administration, like you said. I presume when we gave them this contract, like you said, it would have been, the payment would be over a certain period, over certain sections of the job being completed. To this date, how much of the council actually paid to ISG? If you can answer.
I don't have the specific details on that at the moment, but I would have to get back to you on that.
Okay, and my second point if we have paid this money to ISG, I presume if they do go into a full administration like they have, we'll probably be classed as one of their creditors, and we would hope to get some money back. The current budget for this school was, I think, £20 million.
23.
23. Okay. If we do not get the money we've already paid to ISG back, does that mean then we are going to have to take money out of reserves to make up the difference?
So again, I haven't got the detail on where we're at with the finances, but what I can tell you, as I said earlier, is when we do the payments, we break it up into individual sections. So the whole thing, the whole project cost is worth 23 million pounds. We haven't spent anywhere near that at present. So they will do a piece of work, that work is assessed, and then we will pay an amount for that. The last payment date was round about the time they went into administration, and we haven't paid that. And we've issued that pay less notice. So I'm confident that we've done everything we can to mitigate that going forward. So anything we would have saved now from that payment in September will go towards site surveys and stuff. And once those are done,
I do understand that.
Yeah.
But I presume we have actually paid them something.
Yes, if you go, as I said, 85% of the steel structure is up, the groundworks are done, the drainage is done. We've obviously paid them because they've done.
So the cost of that, I would be generously saying, I'm no expert on this, and I wouldn't hesitate to say this. Say we spent £1 million, right? And this company went into administration and all that lot. Do we have any recourse to get that money back for them going into administration?
All I can tell you is what's written into the contract, which is what I've told you today. So we have paid for the work that they have done. We haven't paid for work that they haven't done.
All right, no worries.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you for the report, which was written very quickly, I believe, on short request. So I'm happy that you've mitigated the risk. And the report is really clear, and you've highlighted the Welsh Government 75-25% financial risk, I suppose, on the build. So I'm not sure if there was anything else. I know in this current economic climate, there are very strange things happening with companies, particularly in the building industry as well. So I'm not sure what else you've done, and I think you've done all that you could have possibly done to mitigate the risk of this company going into administration. So well done on a very quick piece of work.
Thank you. And I mean, all credit goes to my Sustainable Communities for Learning team. As it says in the report, once we had a bad feeling, we put a plan in place and executed it as soon as we learned that something was starting to go south. So it was the foresight of that team and their proactive nature, I think, which is paying dividends now.
Thank you, Helen. Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Trevor, for the report. Very clear and concise, but just so I clarify this matter, one point in my mind. If obviously we're going out to a tender or re-tendering process, and they're going to come in with probably a slightly higher price than went in before, because they are turning up on someone else's site. Any company taking over this work has a greater risk, should we say now. So we would be liable for the 25%. And
that's correct, yeah.
In the 75% back from the Welsh Government of any additional cost.
Yeah, that's the current conversations that we've had. So yeah, if there's a difference of cost, the same intervention rate applies. And for us, that's 25% of whatever that might be. So the next stage is there's a number of various surveys and stuff that they're going to have to do on site to assess exactly where they can pick up from. And until those are done, we won't know what that will look like. But it's reasonable to assume that might be the case, which is why we've had the conversation.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's it. Obviously, you don't know anything yet, so hopefully you'll.
Yeah, I can't comment either way. Yeah, because we simply don't know. So, given the importance for this piece of work, and obviously the changes with ISG going into administration, I'm sure you can expect further updates. Once we have somebody appointed and once we have changes in costs, we'll definitely be bringing all that information back for you folks to see.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I can't see any other hands up. I just wanted to ask Trevor, how confident are you that Welsh Government will approve that variation request?
Like anything else, if there is any additional payment to come in, and again, I can't comment on that. I can't assume that will be the case. If it was, we have a very good relationship with Welsh Government. Every other local authority who employs ISG will be in the same position. You know, I think they'll be very reasonable. Otherwise, they wouldn't be having those conversations with us now and letting us know that.
Sure. Okay, great. Thanks, Trevor. No other hands up from councillors. So I move that we'll note the action being taken and the reports. And thanks to, you know, I know I requested an urgent update and it was a quick turnaround, Trevor. So thank you for doing that so quickly, and for Gareth for helping facilitate. So if I could have a seconder for that. Councillor Haynes, thank you. And that's it for this evening. Thanks everyone for attending and your participation. And our next meeting is scheduled for Monday the 4th of November at 6 o'clock. Nostar.